Chapter 926. In the peach blossom forest, Nie Qianyu looked at the full moon that had already risen into the sky. She could not help but feel unusually gloomy. Let's hope that we can be together for a long time. At this moment, he wondered how Big Brother Ren was doing in the fragrant religion. Today, the Rejuvenation Valley will be punished by the fragrant religion. Big Brother Ren, will he suffer? Zhang Xiaohua, who was far away in the ruins of the fragrant religion, did not seem to be as worried as Nie Qianyu. At this moment, she closed her eyes and concentrated her breath. She released her divine sense to feel the surrounding yuan qi of heaven and earth. She drew the pure yuan qi into her body and refined it into vital energy. At midnight, an inexplicable fluctuation was emitted from Zhang Xiaohua's body. It attracted the endless starlight in the night sky. The starlight actually ignored the existence of the seven-colored restriction and directly shot towards Zhang Xiaohua's surroundings. In a moment, the starlight formed a cocoon and wrapped around Zhang Xiaohua. As the starlight penetrated into her body, the yuan qi of heaven and earth became even more frenzied. It was no longer as orderly as it was during the day. It spiraled and poured into Zhang Xiaohua's body as if it was entering a deep hole. Within her meridians, the vital energy that was refined by the yuan qi of heaven and earth was circulating crazily under the impetus of the Worry-Free Heart Sutra. It cycled through her meridians again and again. Not long after, the vital energy in her meridians was saturated. However, the surrounding vital energy continued to pour in like water. The most direct result was that Zhang Xiaohua's already wide and tough meridians were ruptured again. However, the vital energy was wrapped around by the star power. The star power was the most nourishing. While the vital energy ruptured her meridians, it was also constantly mending the meridians. As the vital energy ruptured the meridians had already expanded and became even more resilient. When the vital energy in her meridians had gathered to a certain extent and could no longer increase, the Worry-Free Heart Sutra improved again. It actually followed the route of the meridians and rushed towards the bottleneck. This time, it was unusually smooth. With the cooperation of the massive amount of vital energy, and star power, the 8th level of the Worry-Free Heart Sutra was easily broken through. With the discovery of the new meridians in Zhang Xiaohua's body, the heaven-earth yuan qi from the outside world once again surged in crazily. Almost within the restriction, strong gusts of wind rose around Zhang Xiaohua. The mysterious fluctuation in Zhang Xiaohua's dream became even more intense, and the starlight in the night sky became even denser. At this moment, another change occurred. The heavenly lightning outside the seven-colored restriction was supposed to strike the restriction. There was a special mechanism on the restriction that guided the heavenly lightning's life force into the yellow earth core. With the mysterious fluctuation, starlight shone through the restriction. At first, it was very little, so it did not affect the refinement of the heavenly lightning. However, as the starlight shone more and more, from a sliver to a ray, in the end, all the heavenly lightning was attracted by the starlight. They ignored the restriction and directly struck Zhang Xiaohua's head. As the heavenly lightning struck, countless tyrannical heaven-earth yuan qi was born. It was guided by Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense and naturally entered her body. Then, the starlight enveloped the tyrannical heaven-earth yuan qi. It was exactly the same as when Zhang Xiaohua attracted the heavenly lightning in the past. A sliver of vigorous life force was isolated by the starlight. As the new heaven-earth yuan qi was refined in Zhang Xiaohua's meridians, the life force disappeared into Zhang Xiaohua's body. However, in the past, the amount of heavenly lightning that Zhang Xiaohua could attract was limited. This time, the heavenly lightning was not attracted by Zhang Xiaohua alone. It was attracted by the entire restriction that was bigger than Dianqi Lake. If Zhang Xiaohua knew the amount of heavenly lightning in her dream, wouldn't her scalp go numb? Yes, needless to say, Zhang Xiaohua's hair was already standing on end. It was indeed her scalp that was going numb. As the number of heavenly lightning increased, the amount of life force isolated by the starlight increased as well. At first, it was a little bit, then a little bit, then a little bit. Finally, it was like a running stream, flowing directly to a mysterious place behind Zhang Xiaohua's head. Therefore, under the restriction, other than the heaven-earth yuan qi flowing into Zhang Xiaohua's meridians like a whirlpool, the weak life force also gradually gathered into a thin stream and poured into Zhang Xiaohua's body. The life force in the restriction, other than the one formed by the heavenly lightning, was emitted from the restriction to the earth's core. Zhang Xiaohua absorbed the life force emitted from the earth's core into her body. As the life force in the restriction decreased, the flow of life force also affected the earth's core that was suspended in the restriction. Gradually, the earth's core began to deviate from its original position and was gradually guided by the life force towards the top of Zhang Xiaohua's head. Although the earth's core moved at a very slow speed, after a long time, it became noticeable. In the end, it actually hung above Zhang Xiaohua's head. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua's body trembled and the mysterious frequency changed again. The speed at which Zhang Xiaohua's pores absorbed the heaven-earth yuan qi instantly stopped. But after a while, Zhang Xiaohua's face rapidly changed color. After a few breaths, she regained her calmness. Following that, Zhang Xiaohua's pores opened and the speed at which she absorbed the heaven-earth yuan qi increased again. More life force was absorbed into her body, and even more star power was drawn over. Zhang Xiaohua's mental cultivation method advanced again. In a short period of time, she actually rushed from the middle stage of level 7 to the late stage of level 8, to the early stage of level 8, to the middle stage of level 8, to the late stage of level 8, and finally to the early stage of level 9. The cultivation of the immortal Tao was most about gradual progress. Zhang Xiaohua's rapid increase in cultivation was a taboo of the immortal Tao. However, while practicing the Worry-Free Sutra, Zhang Xiaohua was also comprehending the heavenly Tao. What was the heavenly Tao? It was the principle of the operation of heaven and earth. The Worry-Free Sutra was but one aspect of the heavenly Tao's cultivation. Zhang Xiaohua saved an old friend from the misty school on Shixin Peak and repaid her kindness with kindness. It was precisely because she understood the way of karma of the heavenly Tao. When she encountered the dream, the way of karma became the hand of karma. Her cultivation of the heavenly Tao had long reached a new height. In contrast to her understanding, the Worry-Free Sutra's cultivation was much lower. If not for the lack of heaven-earth yuan qi, Zhang Xiaohua could have achieved today's cultivation. In addition, Zhang Xiaohua had entered the aroma cult to train his heart and spirit. His accumulation was considerable. Now that he had encountered such a rare opportunity, and the paradise's vitality was comparable to that of the immortal Tao's heyday, how could his cultivation not improve? If not for the fact that Zhang Xiaohua's cultivation time was still short and she had only seen and felt everything, and she did not have a more advanced immortal Tao cultivation method, her cultivation tonight would have been much higher than this. Even so, such a fortuitous encounter was something that even the founder of the immortal Tao, Wan Wuxin, could not have imagined. As they spoke, Zhang Xiaohua's cultivation improved again. More heaven-earth yuan qi was absorbed into her body, and more starlight appeared. Correspondingly, the force of life also increased. Zhang Xiaohua's attraction to the force of life also increased. The earth's core hanging above Zhang Xiaohua's head was originally close to Zhang Xiaohua. With this suction, it was like a moth flying into a flame, directly into Zhang Xiaohua's forehead. Strangely, the earth's core was within the restriction. No matter how hard Zhang Xiaohua tried, she could not grab it. With this suction, it entered her forehead. The earth's core entered her Muwan palace and did not stop. Instead, it rapidly followed the flow of the force of life to the back of Zhang Xiaohua's head. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared without a trace. It was as if nothing had happened at all. After an unknown period of time, Zhang Xiaohua, who was sitting cross-legged, suddenly opened her eyes. At the bottom of her eyes, a faint flame flashed, and her gaze was bright. The moment Zhang Xiaohua opened her eyes, the cocoon-like starlight stopped abruptly and disappeared. The heavenly lightning that was striking Zhang Xiaohua's head also changed direction and returned to its previous position, striking on the rainbow restriction. After waking up, Zhang Xiaohua first stretched lazily, then checked her cultivation. Improvement was certain. With the support of this abundant heaven-earth yuan qi, even a pig who knew how to cultivate could improve. However, when Zhang Xiaohua finished checking, he was both surprised and delighted. He was delighted that his cultivation of the Worry-Free Sutra had actually leaped to the late stage of the 9th level. He was also surprised that his cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds. If his foundation was not stable, it would not be good for his future cultivation. But, since she had already reached such a place, what good ideas did Zhang Xiaohua have? Fortunately, Zhang Xiaohua carefully checked her body again. The new meridians and abundant vital energy were all stable and tight. She did not find anything wrong. When Zhang Xiaohua released her divine sense, she suddenly realized that without the burden of the delusion breaker eye yesterday, her divine sense had recovered to a range of 10 feet. Now that she tried it, it might have a range of 50 to 60 feet. Hee, Zhang Xiaohua laughed. This trip to Huansu is not in vain. Although the Earth's core is not, thinking of the Earth's core, Zhang Xiaohua could not help but look up. This was not a big deal. The yellow light from yesterday was gone, and so was the crystal clear Earth's core. This. Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. What is going on? Thinking, she flew to the previous location of the Earth's core and looked left and right. She reached out and touched it with her divine sense. There was nothing. Only the power of life from the 7-colored restriction was slowly gathering. There was even some missing. Strange, where did the Earth's core go? Zhang Xiaohua scratched her head. Could it have been taken by someone? Zhang Xiaohua thought of this and shouted. Could it be that Nun Jingyi is here? It is very possible. Xia Qing must have already informed Lingering Fragrance Peak with such a huge commotion. Nun Jingyi must have paid attention to this place. She must be here. But, that's not right. Zhang Xiaohua denied. If Nun Jingyi could take the Earth's core, she would have taken it long ago. Why would she keep it until now? Moreover, Nun Jingyi probably does not even know what is inside the restriction. How could she come here? Zhang Xiaohua guessed for a long time but could not figure out the location of the Earth's core. In the end, she came to the conclusion that the Earth's core must be hidden in the so-called different space that Wan Wuxin mentioned. Chapter 927. That's good as well. Out of sight, out of mind. At least I won't be envious of it. Zhang Xiaohua consoled himself. He didn't care about the Earth's core anymore and sat down cross-legged to cultivate the Carefree Heart Sutra. However, when he activated the Carefree Heart Sutra again and drew the thin yuan qi of the world into his body, he discovered that the yuan qi had entered his body and his true qi had been tempered, but there was no change in his cultivation of the Heart Sutra. Even the true qi in his meridians was now saturated. No matter how he tempered it, he could only increase a sliver of true qi. It could not cause any substantial change. Could it be that I've reached a bottleneck? Zhang Xiaohua pondered. After that, he tried again, but it was still the same. He understood that there was a limit to how much he could get rich overnight. At this point, he had probably reached his limit. Thus, he stood up and looked at the place where the Earth's core had disappeared. Regretfully, he rode the wind and went straight to the place where he had broken the restriction yesterday. Now that the restriction had been restored, Zhang Xiaohua did not hesitate. He stretched out his hand and waved Chasing Dream again. The mysterious energy flowed into Chasing Dream and gradually cut open the restriction. Just as the restriction was cut open halfway, Zhang Xiaohua suddenly felt that the energy flow was decreasing. When I cut open the divine restriction that day, the energy flow had already dried up. If the purple energy in the 100 endurance divine restriction did not flow into Chasing Dream and return to my left arm, the innate divine restriction would not have been broken. Now that the mysterious energy flow has dried up, where am I going to find the purple energy? With that thought in mind, Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly used the transfiguration technique. A series of crackling sounds could be heard as his body shrunk significantly. Then, with a leap, he escaped from the restriction. Just as he left the restriction, the originally small opening began to gradually recover. Thank goodness. Zhang Xiaohua flew to the edge of the mountain and heaved a long sigh of relief. Looking at the heavenly thunder above the restriction formation, he couldn't help but feel satisfied. Although he didn't get the Earth's core that Huan Wuxin talked about, he got the Thunder Pearl and solved the problem of the Delusion Breaker Dharma Eye. At the same time, his cultivation of the Carefree Heart Sutra also improved greatly. This trip was not in vain. Zhang Xiaohua transformed his body back to Pan En's handsome appearance. He stood up and flew back on the wind. At this time, Zhang Xiaohua was already at the late stage of Qi refining stage 9 and had mastered half of the Carefree Heart Sutra. Logically speaking, a person who had just stepped into the path of immortality would not be able to use the Imperial Wind technique, let alone fly. However, Zhang Xiaohua was a little strange. He seemed to have an extraordinary mastery of the Imperial Wind technique. He was only at the middle stage of Qi refining stage, but he could already use the Imperial Wind technique to perfection. It was much better than before. Maybe I should try the flying technique again. Zhang Xiaohua, who was riding the wind, was still not satisfied with himself. However, before he could find the chant for the flying technique, he saw a figure sitting cross-legged below him. Zhang Xiaohua frowned and scanned with his divine sense. He understood immediately. What's wrong? Xia Qing, why is she here again? When he flew behind Xia Qing and stood quietly in the air, Xia Qing didn't notice him at all. She seemed to have rested enough and stood up again. She took 3 steps forward, then knelt down and kowtowed 9 times. After that, she got up again, took 3 steps forward, and then knelt down again. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua was very surprised. What is Xia Qing doing? Just like that, Zhang Xiaohua followed behind Xia Qing for a while. As expected, not long after, another bolt of lightning struck down. With a boom, the Yuan Qi in the air exploded again. Xia Qing couldn't dodge in time and her body was pushed far away, falling heavily to the side. When Xia Qing stabilized herself with her qinggong, blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth again. However, Xia Qing gritted her teeth and a determined look appeared on her face. She sneered and said, "Senior, my heart is set on the path of Tao. No matter how hard you try to stop me, unless you take my life, I will still continue to move forward, Senior." Zhang Xiaohua was hiding behind her and understood. He could not help but be puzzled. In this Huan Su, other than him, there were only these disciples of Mo Xian Gong. Where did this senior come from? Io, could it be the person who took away the Earth's core? Zhang Xiaohua was a little uneasy. He looked around and did not find anything strange within 600 feet of his divine sense. Shua. Just as Zhang Xiaohua retracted his divine sense, a bolt of heavenly lightning struck down along with his divine sense. With a bang, it hit the left side of Xia Qing. Zhang Xiaohua jumped in fright and hurriedly flew back a little. At this time, he heard Xia Qing complain again, "Senior, this disciple knows that you are in front. If you didn't save me yesterday, I'm afraid I would have lost my life here. But, since you saved my life, why can't you show some mercy and leave a gap for me to enter the immortal Tao? I am also a direct disciple of Mo Xian Gong on Lingxiang Peak. I am your junior. Please take pity on my hardships." As he spoke, he kowtowed again. Oh my! Zhang Xiaohua immediately understood that Xia Qing thought that the person who saved her yesterday was a senior from the immortal Tao of the incense cult. Moreover, she wanted this senior from the incense cult, whom she had never met before, to impart the immortal Tao to her. Seeing Xia Qing like this, he could not help but smile bitterly. He was not a senior from the incense cult. Moreover, even if he had compassion in his heart, what could he use to fulfill Xia Qing's wish? Carefree Heart Sutra. Please, that was from the Misty School or the Misty School's treasure trove. He had no reason to impart it to a disciple of the incense cult. Perhaps, he could only give her a primordial stone that he used for cultivation. That was what Zhang Xiaohua initially thought. However, when he was about to reach into his pocket, he subconsciously shook his head. At Shixin Peak, he gave Du Feng and Ding Chao Meridian nourishing pills to help them improve their inner strength. After all, they were the three beauties of the Misty School and were old friends from the Misty School. If he made use of them in the future, they would be of great help to his second brother, Zhang Xiaohu. This Xia Qing was different. She had been an outstanding disciple of the incense cult since young. Furthermore, she had made it clear that she wanted to seek guidance from the incense cult senior. He was just a guardian disciple and had nothing to do with any senior. He had never even given a primordial stone to Nie Qianyu, so why should he give it to Xia Qing? If he did this, wouldn't he be a good person? Thinking about it, Zhang Xiaohua dispelled the thought. The incense cult had its own inheritance and he had no reason to interfere. However, seeing that Xia Qing was determined to move forward, there was only lightning in front of her. It was impossible for there to be any senior from the incense cult. Xia Qing would only end up dead if she continued forward. Thus, Zhang Xiaohua took advantage of the situation and pointed his finger at the back of Xia Qing's head. Xia Qing immediately collapsed to the ground. Speaking of Xia Qing's martial arts, she was one of the top in Mo Xian's palace. Zhang Xiaohua wouldn't be able to defeat her so easily. However, Xia Qing hadn't rested since 3 days ago. She had only thought of using her hardships to move the unknown senior and was already exhausted. Who would have thought that there would be a sneak attack behind her? Zhang Xiaohua sighed. He picked up Xia Qing and flew back. Just as he was flying, he saw another signal soaring into the sky. Although he didn't understand what it meant, it was needless to say that it was sent by the other disciples who were with Xia Qing. Sure enough, when he quietly arrived, there were 3 or 4 female disciples. There were bloodstains on their bodies and some of their veils had fallen off. They were holding swords in their hands and looked extremely miserable as they stood there. Zhang Xiaohua placed Xia Qing on the ground not far away and opened her acupuncture points. He then used Earth Escape to escape. Xia Qing slowly woke up. When she saw that she was in a different place, she couldn't help but smile. She hurriedly called out, "Senior," then she flipped over and stood up. When she didn't see anyone, she knelt on the ground in disappointment. She cried out, "Senior, even if you don't want to accept a disciple, then can you give yourself to this disciple? You have saved this disciple time and time again, this disciple." Just as she was kowtowing, the other disciples also saw it. They all cried out in surprise and used their qing gong to rush over. Senior Sister Xia. Seeing Xia Qing like this, everyone looked at each other in dismay. They just looked at each other and didn't know how to ask. Xia Qing cried for a while, but she didn't see any white-haired old man. She was quite disappointed. Wiping her tears, she stood up and asked, "You, how long have you been waiting for this?" "Senior Sister Xia, there was a sudden earthquake yesterday. All the junior sisters were trapped in the array and fought until the early hours of the morning. We finally managed to escape from the array and came here to look for senior sister. And senior sister was also nowhere to be found. We thought that senior sister was also trapped in the array, so we sent out 3 signals in a row to see where senior sister was so that we could meet up, until just now, when we heard senior sister's voice, we found senior sister, but what? But, we have already searched this place and didn't see senior sister seemed to have suddenly appeared, a female disciple said hesitantly. Sigh, Xia Qing let out a long sigh. Looking at the flashing lightning in the distance, she couldn't help but feel unusually melancholic. After a long while, she asked, "Oh right, what kind of abnormal earthquake happened yesterday?" Reporting to senior apprentice Sister Xia, after the tremors a few days ago, there was another huge earthquake yesterday, causing the already dilapidated places in Huansu to be in a complete mess. The most frightening thing was that the boundary of the formation had broken through and moved a lot closer to the core. We were all careless and fell into the formation. And in the array, all kinds of spirit beasts were in a mess. Some were attacking each other, some were peaceful. When we fell into the array, we were attacked by the spirit beasts. Fortunately, we were all at the boundary of the array and escaped with our lives. "Oh, this is bad, Lily." Xia Qing exclaimed, "Have you seen Lily?" Chapter 928. The endless starry sky was silent. Suddenly, a ripple spread out. At the same time, tiny rainbow-colored bubbles suddenly appeared in this huge region. It was like boiling water. The bubbles grew bigger and bigger. When they reached a certain size, they exploded with a crackling sound. When everything calmed down, an incomparably huge light figure appeared in the entire region. The light figure was blurry and distorted. There were also traces of purple lightning bursting out around it. At the center of the light figure, a huge triangle suddenly flashed. It rotated slightly, and it actually looked like a human eye. It contained endless emotions. At this moment, there seemed to be some confusion in the triangle. After a moment, there was a trace of realization and anger. The entire light shadow rotated slightly as if it was about to change direction. However, just as it moved, it stopped. The space shook, as if sighing, and turned back to its original direction. Then, the light shadow flickered and gradually became blurry. The entire space also rotated rapidly. The starlight was absorbed by the disappearing light shadow and gradually formed a black hole. The black hole rapidly shrank until it finally disappeared. Not long after, everything returned to normal. In the ruins of Huan, Zhang Xiaohua put Xia Qing down and immediately escaped underground. After walking for a long time, she emerged from the ground. What's going on?" Zhang Xiaohua's attention was drawn to the ruins in front of him as soon as he reached the surface. Although the ruins of Huan had been dilapidated, many of the main bodies of the palaces were still there due to the battles between the immortal Dao seniors. He could see their former appearances. But now, the remnants of the main bodies were gone. It was a complete mess, as if they had been thoroughly ravaged. At this moment, there was a woo sound. A shadow as fast as lightning rushed over and bit Zhang Xiaohua's neck. Zhang Xiaohua had already released her divine sense. How could she not notice it? Without turning around, she stretched out her right arm. It was as if there were eyes on the back of her head. It was right between the shadow's neck. Roar! The shadow roared. It was a fire wolf. Zhang Xiaohua saw the fire wolf in her hand and was surprised. Isn't this thing in the fire element array? Why did he suddenly run into the earth elemental formation? Seeing the fierce look in the fire wolf's eyes as it opened its mouth and was about to spit out a fireball, how could Zhang Xiaohua allow it to wreak havoc? With a wave of his hand, Chasing Dream appeared and sliced open the fire wolf's stomach. With a wave of his hand, a bead smaller than a soybean flew out and the fire wolf immediately lost its momentum. Zhang Xiaohua tossed the fire wolf to the ground. She frowned when she saw many spirit beasts gathering around. She flew into the air and looked at the direction before diving into the ground and heading towards the deep earth temple. Of course, there were still 5-8 trigrams purple gold furnaces waiting for Zhang Xiaohua to retrieve them in the center of the Five Elements formation. At the core of the Five Elements formation, the disciples looked around and said, "Senior Sister Xia, we don't see Lily." Xia Qing waved her hand and said, "A few days ago, he discovered the abnormality of the array and told me about it. I sent her outside the array to inform the disciples guarding the Rui Jin Hall about it and let them report this information to the lingering fragrance peak in time. However, Lily went out for a long time and didn't come back. Also, according to what you said, there is a big change in the array. The route we took to enter may not be safe." What should we do? Then, Xia Qing gritted her teeth and pulled out a long sword from her waist. She shouted, "Let's go. Let's save Lily first." Yes, senior sister Xia. Although everyone knew that it would be difficult, they had to save their junior sister when she was in trouble. Inside the fragrant religion, the Huan suit was in a mess. In the pugilistic world, it was stagnant water with slight ripples. In a beautiful mountain range, the trees were lush, birds were chirping, and all kinds of flowers were competing for beauty. Below the mountain range, there were several deep pools connected to each other. The water in the pools was dark green and cold. In the middle of the cold pools, there was a giant island covered in mist. There was no land between the giant island and the mountain range. There were only a few cold pools connected to each other. Not long after, some wooden boats or big ships came out from the mist of the giant island and headed towards the mountain range. At the same time, some people came to the giant island from the mountain range in small boats. Suddenly, a person dashed out from the mountain range. That person came to the nearest deep pool and immediately took out a triangular red flag. While waving it, he ran to a wooden boat that was about to set sail. That wooden boat was originally full of people, but when they saw that person holding the small red flag, a few people who were close to the outside immediately jumped off the boat and left a gap. That person didn't stand on ceremony. He jumped onto the boat first and then cupped his hands to express his gratitude to those people. That wooden boat immediately set sail and quickly headed towards the giant island. After the time it took to eat a meal, a beautiful middle-aged woman in her 40s sat on a chair in a simple and unadorned hall. Below her were 2 rows of chairs. However, at this moment, there was only a white-haired old man sitting respectfully on the left. "Lily, you said, we just received news that the fragrant cult has given up on Rejuvenation Valley. They won't be protecting Rejuvenation Valley for 10 years. The old man respectfully stood up and said with a smile, "That's right, sect master. This news was sent here by my disciple as soon as he received it." "Sent here as soon as possible." The female sect master frowned and sighed. "A messenger pigeon is so fast. It's a pity that we can't use it rashly now." "Yes, sect master has considered everything thoroughly. It's not time for us to be open and above board. Let's be patient for now." "Lily, you said, why did the fragrant cult suddenly give such an order? Could it be that Rejuvenation Valley has offended the fragrant cult?" "Yes, according to my analysis, that's exactly the case. I don't think it's a big mistake. Otherwise, the fragrant cult wouldn't have cared about Rejuvenation Valley. This is just a small lesson." The fragrant cult. To think that a small sect like Rejuvenation Valley would ignore it. It can be seen that this is the beginning of the decline of the fragrant cult. You're right, sect master. By the way, we've been plotting for many years in the fragrant cult. Do you have any detailed information?" The old man looked ashamed and said uneasily, "I'm ashamed. Recently, we've received some news that our disciples are doing very well in the fragrant cult. Many of them have reached high positions. However, it's just that the fragrant cult's defenses are very tight. We can only communicate with them once every 2 years when they come out. Yes, I'm really incompetent. Please punish me, sect master." "No need. This isn't your fault. You've done your best." The fragrant cult's protective formation was set up by the immortal Tao seniors. How could we break it? All our efforts were just to see if there were any flaws in it. Thank you for your tolerance, sect master. I've also sent many people into the fragrant cult. I've also sent a young disciple into the fragrant cult. I don't know if the fragrant cult's punishment of the Rejuvenation Valley has anything to do with this disciple of mine. The sect master was delighted and laughed. "I don't think so. If they found out that the disciple was disloyal, wouldn't they have destroyed Rejuvenation Valley long ago? I think that the fragrant cult is using this as bait to find traces of us." "You're wise, sect master. The old man was still respectful and smiled apologetically. Our sect has been in hiding for many years in order to find the weakness of the fragrant cult and the other great sections. But after all, they've left behind some clues. It's impossible that they don't know some clues. However, no matter how hard they think, they won't know our origins. Just as Sect Master has said, this really could be a bait for the fragrant cult. Since that's the case, let's beat them at their own game. Rejuvenation Valley has some grievances in the Jianghu. In the past, their enemies didn't dare to make a move because of the fragrant cult's face. This time, the fragrant cult has sent their face to us for a beating. How can we fail to live up to their good intentions? That's right. The old man was also beaming with joy. Didn't the Soaring Dragon Villa want to make up for their incompetence last time? Let's give them this opportunity. I'd like to see how much Rejuvenation Valley still has after relying on the fragrant cult for so many years. That's right. The fragrant religion said that they wouldn't care about Rejuvenation Valley for the next 10 years. Who knows if Rejuvenation Valley will still exist after 10 years? When Rejuvenation Valley is destroyed, will the fragrant religion just watch? If they reach out, they'll be going back on their words. If they don't, they'll be shooting themselves in the foot. When other sects see Rejuvenation Valley's end, who wouldn't be disheartened? There are many sects relying on us. Even if they still care about us on the surface, in the dark, when the time is right, we'll make a call. Who wouldn't respond? Sect Master is wise. If we can find the fragrant cult's weak spot and stab them, we'll succeed. The fragrant cult's weak spot. It's easier said than done. Even the Tenryu sect far away in the northwest probably has the same idea. It's only because I'm afraid that there might be some unforeseen circumstances that I'm unwilling to take action. The beautiful woman's words were somewhat obscure. The old man pretended not to hear them. Then this subordinate will give the order. Let the young ones make some preparations and go out for some exercise. Yes. The mysterious sect master nodded slightly. He seemed to be quite reassured by the old man. After the old man bowed, the beautiful woman stood up and picked up a small exquisite teapot from the small tea table beside her. It was about the size of a palm and the small spout was even smaller. The beautiful woman held the teapot in her hand and played with it for a while. Then, she placed the spout between her cherry-red lips. Her thin lips exerted a little force as if she was sucking the tea from the teapot. She sucked for a long time. However, what was surprising was that the beautiful woman's internal strength was so exquisite that she only sucked for half a cup of tea's time. How much tea could that palm-sized teapot hold? But when the beautiful woman finished sucking the tea, she closed her eyes slightly as if she was enjoying it very much. Who knew how much tea she drank in that one breath? This exquisite teapot that was like a toy, also contained a universe inside? In the incense cult, in the heavenly 5 elements formation, the 5 elements primordial chi was already in a mess. The pure primordial chi in various places had already mixed into a ball. Various spiritual beasts that relied on the 5 elements primordial chi to survive had also left their original territories and wandered around randomly. Naturally, various spiritual beasts that had a poor sense of the overall situation began to fight for their own small interests. Zhang Xiaohua first flew in the sky. When she saw the chaos in the ruins of Huanshu, she couldn't help but frown. She made a gesture and escaped into the ground. She ignored the instinctive fight and headed towards the Deep Earth Palace and Greenwood Palace. After all, the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace that was suppressed in the eye of the formation was Zhang Xiaohua's treasure. There was no reason for her to steal the chicken and lose the rice. It turned out that Hualang had also come to the Sharp Gold Palace. At this moment, he was surrounding a female disciple and attacking her from time to time. That female disciple was already covered in blood. One of her arms was long gone and her empty sleeves were also extremely tattered. The female disciple clenched her silver teeth and struggled to defend with the long sword in her right hand. Chapter 929. The fire wolves' attack power was very sharp. Even someone as strong as Zhang Xiaohua would have a hard time dealing with them. How could this female disciple who was besieged by several fire wolves be a match for them? One of the fire wolves spat out a fireball the size of a wicker basket, which rapidly hit the long sword in the female disciple's hand. Soon after, another fire wolf pounced on the female disciple with a "hoo" sound, and its bloody mouth was about to bite the female disciple's pink face. Her nose seemed to have smelled the stench of the wolf's mouth, and the female disciple's vision turned black, and she fainted from happiness. Just as the fire wolf was about to bite off the female disciple's throat, a small sword silently flashed from behind the female disciple's neck. It brushed past the female disciple's tender neck and pierced into the fire wolf's mouth. Following which, a pool of blood burst out from the back of the fire wolf's neck, and the small sword drilled out from within. The fire wolf's corpse fell to the ground with a plop. This sudden change startled the other fire wolves. They looked around vigilantly, but the surroundings were still chaotic, and there wasn't anything out of the ordinary. The few fire wolves were still hesitating, when suddenly, a figure flashed out from the ground between them. This person's facial features were picturesque. And it was as if his facial features were really picturesque. The space between his eyebrows was elegant, and his height was just right. In his hand was a sword embryo. The moment his figure flashed out, he immediately waved it, and with a "pa" sound, it hit the waist of a nearby fire wolf. That fire wolf was caught off guard, and as if it had been stabbed by a straw, black blood gushed out of its mouth. Its eyes were filled with disbelief, and it fell to the ground. The remaining fire wolves were shocked. They opened their mouths and spat out a few fireballs at the person. Seeing this, the person laughed and said, "You bastard, I am here and you still dare to be presumptuous? I'll let you see eyes means." As he spoke, the person flew in the air and dodged a few fireballs. Before the fire wolves could control the fireballs and catch up, he immediately made a gesture in his hand. The small sword that had been forgotten by the fire wolves flew from the side and pierced into the mouth of another fire wolf. The fire wolf howled in despair and fell to the ground weakly. The fireball flying in the air also fell to the ground instantly. Ha ha ha. The person laughed again when he saw this. It's really straightforward. I didn't suffer the heavenly thunder for nothing. Wasn't this person Zhang Xiaohua who was easy to form into Panan? As early as when Zhang Xiaohua broke into the divination 5 elements formation, she had already encountered fire wolves. However, at that time, her divine sense was not even 20% of what it was now. Her true qi was also much worse. It was still a little difficult to deal with fire wolves. Now that her skill had greatly improved, it was easy to deal with them. The so-called wolves were the most cunning. Regardless of whether it was the blood wolves or the fire wolves, when the remaining fire wolves saw Zhang Xiaohua's divine power, how could they not know how powerful she was? After a few low howls, they scattered and fled in panic. The small sword-chasing dream swayed a few times in the air and did not chase after them. It flew back to Zhang Xiaohua's hand. Zhang Xiaohua walked to the front of the female disciple. First, she swept her divine sense over her. Then, she cautiously placed her hand on the female disciple's pulse to check. Then, she frowned and hesitated. This female disciple was seriously injured. Her arm had been bitten off by an unknown spirit beast. She had lost a lot of blood. Although she had taken the elixir from the fragrant cult and had taken it early, her life. It was hard to say. If Zhang Xiaohua left at this time, not to mention the blood wolves, any random spirit beast would be able to eat her. Perhaps, I can only send her out of the formation. Zhang Xiaohua secretly thought. Then, she took out a yuhuandan pill from her bosom. Without thinking, she threw it into the mouth of the female disciple. After all, it was also a life. Then, Zhang Xiaohua bent down. Just as she was about to hold the female disciple in her hand, there were a few earth-shaking sounds. It seemed that a few heavy giant creatures were walking towards Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua did not raise her head. She swept her divine sense over and a smile appeared on her face. Then, she straightened her body and looked in the direction of those giant creatures. Not long after, a few huge black bears appeared. They were the mountain-shaking bears that Zhang Xiaohua saw at Wan Wuxin's place. Those mountain-shaking bears were far away from the deep earth palace and ran to the sharp gold palace. Their bodies were huge and their defense was extremely strong. In addition, they were extremely strong. In this chaotic 5 elements formation, they could be considered as the overlords. When the mountain-shaking bear in the lead suddenly saw a smiling stranger in front of it, it unconsciously became vigilant. Before Zhang Xiaohua could say anything, the mountain-shaking bear's eyes showed hesitation again. It stood far away and did not go forward. Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. Could it be that the mountain-shaking bear saw through the flaw of the transfiguration technique? If even a mere spirit beast can see through it, how can I count on it to deceive Abbess Jing Yi, who is far away at Lingering Fragrance Peak? The mountain-shaking bear stared at Zhang Xiaohua and sized her up. It was still uncertain. It looked at the Great Wisdom Sword and then looked at Zhang Xiaohua's unfamiliar face. Then, as if it had discovered something, it laughed and roared towards the sky. It landed on all fours and ran over. It only stopped in front of Zhang Xiaohua. The remaining mountain-shaking bears also followed. However, they were not like the leading mountain-shaking bear. They were still somewhat vigilant and treated Zhang Xiaohua as a stranger. Could it be that the transfiguration technique was not seen through? Or does the leading mountain-shaking bear have a unique ability? Zhang Xiaohua thought. Then, she saw the mountain-shaking bear walk forward. It waved its paws left and right as if it was greeting Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and silently used the transfiguration technique to restore her original appearance. Then, the other mountain-shaking bear's eyes revealed joy. It seems that the transfiguration technique is still useful. Only the leading mountain-shaking bear can. Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua suddenly thought of something and laughed. That's right, before and after she entered Sumeru world, there was no difference. However, the mountain-shaking bear's attitude was completely different. It was obvious that it was because of the thing that Wan Wuxin left in her Naiwan palace. Now, even though she had used the transfiguration technique, she was still easily recognized by the mountain-shaking bear. She did not know if the transfiguration technique was useless or if Wan Wuxin's methods were brilliant. It seems that I should find an opportunity to get rid of this immortal Dao Senior's legacy. Although Senior Huan's tone did not sound malicious, and in terms of legacy, I am considered his junior by who knows how many generations, but, after all, there is something that I do not understand in my Naiwan palace. I am really worried. Zhang Xiaohua rubbed her nose and thought to herself. When the few mountain-shaking bears saw that Zhang Xiaohua was deep in thought, they obediently stood by the side. Zhang Xiaohua raised her head and looked at these spiritual beasts with little intelligence. She felt a warmth in her heart. She leaped into the air and her feet left the ground. She was taller than the mountain-shaking bear by half a body. She raised her hand and patted its head. When the mountain-shaking bear saw that Zhang Xiaohua was so powerful, its bean-sized eyes flashed with a strong light. The mountain-shaking bear shrunk its head and lowered its paws. It was as docile as the old yellow dog in the Guizhuang house. All right, it's okay. All right. The 5 elements formation is already in chaos. You old bears don't have to be afraid. Do what you have to do. This poor Taoist still has things to do. Let's meet again if fate wills it. Zhang Xiaohua said as he patted the shoulders of the bears, bidding them farewell. The black bears also understood and shook their heads reluctantly. At this moment, there was a commotion in front of them. Zhang Xiaohua frowned slightly and released her divine sense. She had long understood that from the core of Huan Su, it was Xia Qing who was leading a few disciples towards them. Why, is there one less? Zhang Xiaohua was surprised at first, but when she saw that Xia Qing and the rest were exhausted, and there were fire wolves, saber-toothed tigers, and a few other spiritual beasts around them that she had never seen before, she understood. She was about to go forward, but when she saw the female disciple on the ground and the few mountain-shaking bears beside her, her eyes lit up. She first flew to the female disciple, carried her and threw her on the shoulder of a mountain-shaking bear. That mountain-shaking bear did not understand what was going on, but it still stood there, naively, and pressed its large paw on the female disciple's back to prevent her from falling. Then, Zhang Xiaohua pointed in the direction of the sound and said while gesturing, "Brother Bear, there are a few people over there. They are the descendants of your master, Senior Huan. Can you bring them out of the five elements formation?" Although that mountain-shaking bear was a spiritual beast, it could not be compared to Little Martin and Little Dog. How could it understand? It also did not know what the so-called descendants were. Fortunately, Zhang Xiaohua's sign language was easy to understand. After gesturing for a while, that mountain-shaking bear seemed to understand. It shook its head and shook its paw, then ran towards Zhang Xiaohua's direction. After running a few steps, it turned back to look at Zhang Xiaohua, only to see that Zhang Xiaohua had already flown in another direction. As for Xia Qing and the others, they hurriedly followed the path they remembered. This path was originally very safe and would not encounter any spiritual beasts, but now that the five elements formation was in chaos and the formation had been overturned, how could it be safe? Moreover, with these people together, they were more conspicuous than Lily. They had long been tracked by the spirit beasts that had smelled their scent. After a few fights, they had already lost a disciple inside. However, the fortunate thing was that they had consulted each other and had a clear route to get out. Unlike Lily, although she had entered the array earlier, she had been chased by the spirit beasts. She had first been injured, then lost her way. If she had not met Zhang Xiaohua, she would have died. Even so, there was no longer a safe route and danger lurked in every corner. If it were not for the fact that the spiritual beasts of different attributes were wary of each other and attacked each other from time to time, they would not have been able to persevere until now. Just when Xia Qing felt that she had reached the edge of the five elements great array and that she might be able to escape after a few more battles, she smelled the ground shaking again. When she peeked into the distance, she saw that it was a few huge mountain-shaking bears. She couldn't help but feel disheartened. It was already a leaky roof, and now it was raining continuously. How could she still have a chance to survive after encountering the mountain-shaking bears that were almost the overlords of the five elements great array? As for the spirit beasts chasing Xia Qing, their eyes were also filled with vigilance. Chapter 930. When the mountain-shaking bear arrived at the scene, there were a few spirit beasts that looked similar to mice but were several times larger in size. They were constantly attacking Xia Qing and the others. Everyone was in a hurry to deal with them. The arrival of the mountain-shaking bear not only made Xia Qing's heart turn cold, but the long sword in her hand also went limp and the strength of her stab was completely gone. Those spirit beasts were quite vigilant and ignored Xia Qing and the others' reactions. They only turned their bodies to the side and stood there in a daze. The mountain-shaking bear didn't care about this and strode into the field. Before they could stabilize themselves, another disciple with sharp eyes saw Lily on the shoulder of the mountain-shaking bear. He cried out involuntarily, "Senior sister Xia, this is junior sister Lily." When Xia Qing heard this, she was pleasantly surprised. However, she didn't dare to move her feet and only stared at the mountain-shaking bears with bright eyes. However, when the mountain-shaking bears entered the field, they were different from the other spirit beasts. They didn't linger at the side and directly surrounded Xia Qing and the other spirit beasts. Then, the mountain-shaking bear in the lead raised its head and roared loudly. Its voice spread far and wide. The rat-like spirit beasts were stunned and became furious. They also began to squeak and a few of them even flipped their bodies in the air. Xia Qing didn't understand, but her heart grew colder. Lily was captured by the mountain-shaking bear and she didn't know if she was dead or alive. However, looking at the bloodstains on her body, she was definitely seriously injured. Since the mountain-shaking bear had surrounded them, they must be treated the same way. Thinking about this, Xia Qing looked at the disciples beside her. Unknowingly, everyone exchanged glances and tightened their grip on their weapons. Their hearts were filled with the desire to die. Around Xia Qing, a few spirit beasts jumped a few times in the air. One of them flew over with a whoosh and clawed at the mountain-shaking bear's face like a yellow wind. Although the spirit beast was fast, the mountain-shaking bear didn't panic. When the spirit beast's claw was in front of his eyes, he raised his thick bare paw and blocked it. Whoosh! There seemed to be a few sparks. The spirit beast used the momentum to twist its body in the air and charged at the mountain-shaking bear. It spat out a small water column. The water column was like an arrow, shooting straight towards the mountain-shaking bear's eyes. When the mountain-shaking bear saw this, it was exceptionally furious. It opened its ferocious mouth and let out a roar. Its massive body was extremely nimble as it leapt forward. It extended its left palm and slapped the water pillar. The water pillar disappeared, but not a single drop of water fell. The mountain-shaking bear's other paw was also extended at lightning speed. When the little spiritual beast was extremely close to it, it immediately slapped its body. With a bang, the little beast was shot down like a stone falling on the ground. Then, the little beast jumped out of the ground and ran far away, leaving only a small hole in the ground. Immediately, the other small beasts also cried out and fled in all directions. When these small beasts disappeared, the mountain-shaking bear stood majestically and looked around with its small eyes. With a dong sound, it stomped its left foot. The spirit beasts that were still looking around earlier were like monkeys that had lost their tree. They scattered with a loud bang. When they ran far away, they didn't give up and hid behind a few ruins, watching from afar. Seeing the mountain-shaking bear scattering the spirit beasts, Xia Qing didn't feel lucky in her heart. Although these spirit beasts lived in the 5 elements' great array and were quite intelligent, they were still wild beasts after all. They had a cruel temperament and viewed human lives as weeds. One of her own junior sisters was torn apart by a heaven-reaching ape in front of its eyes. It didn't have any tender feelings for the fairer sex. Who knew that when she tightened her grip on the weapon in her hand, the mountain-shaking bear still didn't attack? Instead, those mountain-shaking bears still surrounded them from afar, watching coldly. This. Xia Qing scratched her head. She clearly saw how strong the mountain-shaking bear was. The water pillars that she and her group were exhausted from dealing with were scattered with a slap from the mountain-shaking bear. The spirit beasts that she couldn't even stab with her sword were sent flying with a slap from the mountain-shaking bear. How could she take the initiative to attack? After a long while, seeing that the situation was extremely awkward, a quick-witted disciple suddenly said softly, "Senior Sister Xia. I feel that these mountain-shaking bears seem to be protecting us." His tone was extremely weak and by the end, it was almost inaudible. That's right, this kind of thinking was really inconceivable. However, it was this sentence that made Xia Qing's mind light up. Isn't that so? Previously, at the core of the ruins of Huan, there was a senior from our sect who appeared to save us. This might be the work of that senior too. The more Xia Qing thought about it, the more she felt that it was possible. She immediately knelt on the ground and shouted loudly, "But, which senior saved us? Please show yourself, and let us thank you." When the other disciples heard this, they were extremely surprised and quickly knelt on the ground. However, after a few kowtows, there was no movement. There were only a few mountain-shaking bears standing at the side. This. Xia Qing frowned and thought for a while. She stood up and said softly, "Junior sisters, the situation in front of us, this mountain-shaking bear doesn't know what it means. Perhaps it matches my guess. Let's walk forward, what do you all think?" Naturally, no one had any objections. Thus, Xia Qing and the others tried to follow the original route and walked forward for a while. To their surprise, the mountain-shaking bear didn't make things difficult for them. It only scattered around them and followed them forward. Xia Qing almost clapped her hands. She smiled and said loudly, "Thank you for your concern, Senior." Then, she quickly walked to the mountain-shaking bear that was carrying Bai He on its shoulder and cupped her hands. "Excuse me. Could you please, return junior sister Bai He to me?" Xia Qing's politeness was doused with cold water by the mountain-shaking bear's arrogance. It turned its head away and didn't even look at her. Xia Qing was extremely embarrassed. A disciple beside her was a little anxious. "Senior sister Xia, let's get out of the formation quickly. It won't be too late to ask for junior sister Bai He when we get out." "Yes, senior sister Xia, they are mountain-shaking bears after all. They are not us." "They may not understand what you mean," Xia Qing naturally understood. She nodded, waved her hand and led the way forward. Everyone had fought hard for a long time and their inner energy was already exhausted. However, seeing that there was hope for survival, why would they care about the damage to their meridians by forcefully using their inner energy? They all forcefully used their inner energy, extracted their inner energy from their meridians, and used their lightness skills to move towards the edge of the ruins of Huan. The mountain-shaking bear was indeed valiant. It took large strides as if the ground was just inches away. It seemed to effortlessly surround Xia Qing. Along the way, there were some sporadic spiritual beasts that didn't know what was good for them and harassed them from time to time. However, they were all defeated by the mountain-shaking bear's powerful martial arts. This made Xia Qing and the rest even more nervous. It must be one of the seniors from our cult who took action. There was naturally someone who took action. However, how could it be the seniors from the incense cult in Xia Qing and the rest's hearts? Yes, not only was it not a senior from the incense cult, it seemed like it was doing something that was detrimental to the incense cult. Just as the mountain-shaking bear escorted Xia Qing and the rest to the edge of the ruins of Huan, they were still carefree and didn't seem to hide their tracks at all. At this moment, there was a sudden earthquake. Without any warning, the entire ground shook violently. The ruins of Huan, which was already broken to the point that it couldn't get any more broken, was once again filled with dust. Not only did Xia Qing and the rest lose their footing and fall to the ground, even the mountain-shaking bear and the rest had a horrified expression in their eyes. Their bodies swayed left and right, as if they were about to fall. Fortunately, the shaking was extremely short and stopped in an instant. When Xia Qing got up from the ground, a disciple cried out in horror, "Senior sister Xia, this is already the second time the array shook. It seems more intense than the last time. It's just that the duration is much shorter. Hurry up and get out. There must be a great change in the array. Perhaps the core thing has changed." Xia Qing was shocked, but then she revealed a joyful expression. Perhaps it's the right time for that thing to be born. Hurry up and report to the cult leader. If there's good news, perhaps everyone will benefit." When the rest heard this, they were also delighted. They immediately got up and ran to the edge. Extremely far away was the location of the array core of the Ruijin Palace. Zhang Xiaohua's figure was floating in the air. She was holding the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace that was previously suppressing the array core. Her face revealed a horrified expression. "Are you kidding me? Why is there such a big movement? I'm just taking back the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace. It was originally mine." Then she thought about it and realized something. She had put away the 5 elements beads in the 5 array cores of the 5 elements array that she was barely able to maintain. That day, when she collected the earth element bead, the entire array shook. However, it wasn't very big. When she came out of the core restriction, the entire array changed again. It must be related to the thunder bead that she put away. Of course, the Earth's core had hidden itself in the nameless void. Perhaps it was also related to the great change in the array. Now, she had put away the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace and completely destroyed the 5 elements array. How could it not cause a disturbance? Oh no! Won't my movement attract Nanjingyi's attention? Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. I still need to think of a way to divert her attention. Zhang Xiaohua's eyes turned. She unconsciously came up with a plan. With a smile, she broke through the air and went to the place where she entered the array. Xia Qing and the others walked for a long time but still didn't see a familiar place. She couldn't help but be shocked. Could it be that the array changed and changed the route? Just as she was thinking, she heard a long roar from a few mountain-shaking bears around her. Their eyes revealed traces of uneasiness and they slowed down their pace. Xia Qing and the others didn't understand. Their speed was still the same. After half a cup of tea's time, Xia Qing's eyes lit up. Between the gaps of the ruins in the distance, she could see a flat area. Wasn't it the edge of the Huansu? Xia Qing and the others were overjoyed. Just as they were about to rush out, the mountain-shaking bears stopped. With a low roar, they threw Lily on the ground and walked around for a long time, as if they were looking for something. However, they didn't find anything. Then, they turned around and strode into the depths of the Huansu. Chapter 931. Seeing that mountain-shaking bear had abandoned Lily, a few disciples hurried forward. Seeing that Lily was still breathing, they didn't dare to neglect her and immediately carried her on their shoulders. After running wildly for a while, they finally exited the Huan ruins and arrived on a flat surface. Only then did they heave a sigh of relief. Xia Qing immediately knelt down on the ground and said, "Disciple Xia Qing thanks Senior for saving us on behalf of all the junior sisters." The other disciples also knelt down. Just when they were about to get up and didn't expect any response, a voice came from the distant sky. Everyone was overjoyed. When they looked up, they saw a burly man in a simple robe floating in the distance. This. Xia Qing was shocked. He was obviously not an elder or leader of the aroma-spreading religion. Could he be a consecrator of some generation? However, Xia Qing immediately denied it. This immortal technique could only be obtained by the leader or the elders. Consecrators couldn't do that. However, looking at this man floating in the sky, she realized that he was even more powerful than the leader. This made Xia Qing scratch her head. You are all descendants of Ai's old friends. Naturally, I should help you. The man's voice was extremely weak. Xia Qing could only hear him clearly. Before she could say anything, the man waved his hand and flew into the depths of the Huan ruins like the wind. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared. Ah! The disciples, including Xia Qing, were all dumbfounded. They had heard countless legends of the immortal Tao and revered the deeds of their ancestors. But this immortal Tao divine ability to fly without a trace, was something they had never dreamt of even in their wildest dreams. It was Lord Cult Leader, no one dared to think further. Is that senior sister Xia? In the distance, while Xia Qing and the others were stunned, a few male disciples of the Rui Jin Palace ran over in surprise. The first one was Ren Wufeng, whom Zhang Xiaohua met. Seeing the man in the Taoist robe fly away, Xia Qing and the others were full of surprise and regret. Hearing someone calling them, they calmed down and turned around. As expected, it's senior sister Xia. Ren Wufeng was also pleasantly surprised to see Xia Qing. He looked around and tried to sound her out. Over the past few days, there have been huge changes in Huansu. I was panicking and didn't know what to do. Now that I've seen senior sister, I'm relieved. Xia Qing was noncommittal as she nodded and said, I've made junior brother Ren worry. It's just that, the boundary of Huansu, seems to have expanded quite a bit. Ren Wufeng cupped his fists and said, Senior martial sister Xia, you're right. Ever since the first slight tremor in Huan Su a few days ago, the edge of Huan Su began to expand outwards. I panicked and could only gradually move backwards. The biggest tremor in the middle caused the ruins at the edge of the ruins of waste to be even more dilapidated. The area of expansion was the largest and the speed was also extremely fast. Even the small ones were almost swept into it. The saber-toothed tigers and other wild beasts inside scared me so much that I broke out in a cold sweat. Ren Wufeng was eloquent and said clearly, even the last tremor just now, the area of expansion was also much larger. Xia Qing waved her hand and said, "This matter. Have you reported it to sect leader?" "Of course." Ren Wufeng was resolute at first, but then he smiled and said, Although I know that Senior Marshal Sister Xia is here and the matter of Huan Su should be decided by Senior Marshal Sister Xia, it's just that Senior Marshal Sister Xia is in Huan Su and it's quite inconvenient to send messages, so I took the initiative and sent out the highest level signal on me the day before yesterday. It's just that, you've done well. Xia Qing smiled and nodded. She took out a signal from her bosom and handed it over. She said, although you've sent out the signal, sect leader might not care about it with the disciples of Mo Xian Palace around. Send out this signal for me and ask sect leader to come quickly. Yes. Ren Wufeng took it. He knew that Xia Qing and the others must have encountered some unforeseen event and their inner strength was insufficient, so they let him use it. Seeing Ren Wufeng send out the signal, Xia Qing heaved a sigh of relief and asked in a low voice, "How's Junior Marshal Sister Baiha's injury?" A disciple next to her whispered, "Junior Marshal Sister Baiha's injury is very serious. Not to mention that she has lost an arm, even the meridians in her body are torn. She needs to recuperate for a while before she can, well, that's good. As long as she can keep her life, it's a blessing. Feed Baiha another Yuhuandan pill." However, before Xia Qing finished speaking, the disciple next to her continued, "It's just that, there's a medicinal power in Junior Marshal Sister Baiha's body that's nourishing her injury. This medicinal power is very similar to the Yuhuandan pill of our sect, but the medicinal power seems to be much stronger, eh?" Xia Qing frowned and stretched out her hand. A wisp of inner strength was transferred into her, and a smile gradually appeared on her face. "Yes, this medicinal power is similar to the Yuhuandan pill. It should be from the immortal Dao Senior we saw just now. This also means that the Senior is our incense cult's consecrator. This Junior Marshal Sister Baiha must have been saved by him. But that Senior looks not much older than us." A disciple asked. "There are countless immortal Dao supernatural powers, and it should be very easy to rejuvenate. That Senior looks like a middle-aged man, but maybe he's older than our sect leader." Xia Qing explained with a smile. "Immortal Dao Senior. Middle-aged man." Ren Wufeng was puzzled, but he didn't dare to ask. "Junior brother Ren, do you have horses and carriages here?" Xia Qing turned her head and asked. "Of course, Senior Marshal Sister Xia, do you want to use them?" "I'll go and prepare them now." Ren Wufeng cupped his hands and left. In less than the time it took for an incense stick to burn, she led the disciples of Ruijin Palace back with a few horses and a carriage. Looking at her junior sisters putting the Baiha into the carriage, Xia Qing instructed, "Junior brother Ren, there's a huge change in Huan Su. Although we've already sent out a signal, Lord Cult Master is busy every day and might not have the time to come over. We still need to report to Lingering Fragrance Peak. We are all injured. Send a few disciples to follow us back to the mountain." "Yes." Ren Wufeng swiftly arranged everything. With a few disciples of the Sharp Gold Hall leading the way, the group was about to leave the Huan ruins. At this moment, an odd beast darted out from behind a huge rock not far away. It slanted around the crowd and headed towards the edge of the ruins of Huan. This. Xia Qing looked at the familiar David's deer and couldn't help but ask, "This, is it the David's deer?" Seeing this, Ren Wufeng said curiously, yes. Just a few days ago, a person who claimed to be the disciple of Mo Xian Gong of Lingering Fragrance Peak entered the ruins of Huansu. He said that he was sent by Lord Cult Master to pick up Senior Sister Xia. This odd beast was left behind by that disciple. Disciple of Lingering Fragrance Peak. Xia Qing frowned. Is he called Ren Xiaoyao? Yes, it's Ren Xiaoyao. Ren Wufeng was surprised. Could it be that this Ren Xiaoyao isn't the disciple of Lingering Fragrance Peak? That's right. He's the disciple of Lingering Fragrance Peak personally appointed by Lord Cult Master. Didn't you check his waist token? No, of course I did. But it's my first time seeing this disciple of Lingering Fragrance Peak, so... Ren Wufeng nodded and then realized, could it be that Senior Sister Xia didn't meet him? I thought Senior Sister Xia had seen him, and he's already. Xia Qing waved her hand, I haven't seen him yet. We're all at the core of the ruins of Huansu. How can Ren Xiaoyao enter? Unless Lord Cult Master tells him the route. Then, looking at the back of the David's deer, she shook her head and said, not to mention that Lord Cult Master won't tell him the route, even if he did, now, unless God opens his eyes, otherwise, it's impossible for him to survive. Just when Xia Qing came to a conclusion, God really opened his eyes. The David's deer ran to the edge of the ruins of Huansu and stopped at a distance, as if it was extremely scared. In the ruins in front of it, the shadow of a saber-toothed tiger loomed, and then a thin and tall figure flew out. With a bang, it crashed into a mountain rock not far away, and there was no movement for a long time. This. Xia Qing was dumbfounded. She had seen Zhang Xiaohua before. Although she didn't have a deep impression of him, she still knew about his thin and tall figure and his reputation of breaking into Lingering Fragrance Peak. She had just mentioned him, and he actually escaped from the ruins of Huansu. Junior brother Ren, go over and take a look, see if Ren Xiaoyao is still alive. Ren Wufeng urged the horse. Halfway through, he saw Zhang Xiaohua standing up unsteadily and looking around blankly. When he saw Ren Wufeng, his face was filled with joy, and he walked unsteadily towards Ren Wufeng's direction. The David's deer was Huanhuan. It cried out happily and rushed towards Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua got onto the David's deer with great difficulty, and then urged Huanhuan to come in front of Ren Wufeng. Leaning on Huanhuan's back, she said weakly, Junior brother Ren. Ren Wufeng confirmed Zhang Xiaohua's identity as a disciple of the guardian. He didn't dare to neglect and said with a smile, Senior brother Ren, please come over here. Senior Sister Xia from Mo Nong Gong is returning to Lingering Fragrance Peak. Returning to Lingering Fragrance Peak? Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously, it's over. She's going back just like that. This. I don't know, you'd better ask Senior Sister Xia. Ren Wufeng shook his head. When he was in front of Xia Qing, Zhang Xiaohua struggled to get off the David's deer. Xia Qing frowned and said angrily, no need, Ren Xiaoyao, you're injured now, it's better for you to sit on the horse. Thank you, Senior Sister Xia. Zhang Xiaohua said with a grin. Ren Xiaoyao, why are you here? Aren't you accompanying Zixia at Lingering Fragrance Peak? Why did Lord Cult Leader ask you to come here? Why did you run into the ruins of Huan by yourself? Did Lord Cult Leader let you in? Without waiting for Zhang Xiaohua to speak, Xia Qing threw a bunch of questions at him. Zhang Xiaohua had already prepared his words. When Xia Qing's voice fell, he answered leisurely, I'm here on Lord Cult Leader's orders to come to the ruins of Huan to fetch Senior Sister Xia. Of course, I'm indebted to Lord Cult Leader's kindness and didn't force me to go in and explore, but I thought that since I'm already a disciple of the guardian of Mo Nong Gong, I should be able to enter the ruins of Huan. Wouldn't it be better if I could help Senior Sister Xia inside? So you acted on your own initiative and entered the ruins of Huan? Xia Qing asked angrily. Chapter 932. Yes? Zhang Xiaohua said curiously, but I didn't expect it to be so quiet inside. I didn't run into any of the monsters junior brother Ren Wufeng mentioned until a few days ago. I went to a place, and before I could investigate in detail, the ground shook. Then, I saw some strange things that were different from the monsters junior brother Ren Wufeng mentioned. Hee, my martial arts are limited. I can't compare with senior sister Xia, so I gave up the idea of going forward and went back the way I came. But, it was a quiet ruin a few days ago. I don't know what happened, but it suddenly became lively. If I didn't have the strength to run fast, I would have been eaten by those beasts. TSK, I don't know what those monsters saw in me. I don't have much meat on me. What's so delicious about me? Zhang Xiaohua shook his head. His words made the female disciples of Mo Xian Palace cover their mouths. Only Xia Qing frowned. When she met Zhang Xiaohua in the fragrant cult, she was cold and didn't like him. When she heard about the matter between Zhang Xiaohua and Nie Qianyu, she thought that Zhang Xiaohua saved Nie Qianyu in order to enter the fragrant cult. Later, when she heard that Zhang Xiaohua broke into the Lingxiang Peak and got along with Zixia, she felt more and more ashamed of Zhang Xiaohua's character. Now that she heard Zhang Xiaohua's glib tongue, she was disgusted. She didn't want to ask about his encounter in the ruins of Huanyu and just sneered. It seems that junior brother Ren is quite lucky. I don't know what he encountered in there and what benefits he got. However, just by seeing junior brother Ren being chased by the saber-toothed tiger. TSK, it's not something to be proud of. Well. Zhang Xiaohua scratched his head and smiled. I met. Xia Qing waved her hand and stopped him. Junior fellow apprentice Ren is the protector disciple of Mo Xian Gong, which is the direct subordinate of Hierarch Darren. Although his position is not high, it is not something I can ask. Since Hierarch Darren sent you to meet him, you should report everything to Hierarch Darren in detail after meeting him. Then, without waiting for Zhang Xiaohua's reply, she waved her hand and said, let's go ahead. You stay behind. That. Yes. Zhang Xiaohua was a little confused. Xia Qing was an old acquaintance of hers outside the incense cult. It was because of this relationship that she saved her several times in the Huansu. Although she didn't ask for her gratitude, she didn't need to be so cold. After everyone moved forward, Zhang Xiaohua leaned over the back of the David's deer and slowly followed behind. Thinking about Xia Qing's respect and pleading to her in the Huansu, a senior of the Immortal Path whom she had never met, Zhang Xiaohua understood. Although her heart was firm, her nature hadn't changed at all. The pride in her heart overflowed even in front of the weak. Was this kind of person suitable to cultivate the Immortal Path? Zhang Xiaohua didn't know this question and was too lazy to think about it. He just thought about it and threw it to the back of his mind. He began to think about how to deal with Nun Jingyi. Although Zhang Xiaohua used the transfiguration technique to transform himself into Wan Wuxin and deceive Xia Qing and the others, he couldn't guarantee that he could deceive Nun Jingyi. He followed Xia Qing and the others into the Huansu. Now that such a big change had happened in the Huansu, he would definitely be suspected by Nun Jingyi. Since he was the initiator of this change, how could he not be nervous? Moreover, he was full of the secrets of the Immortal Path. If Nun Jingyi discovered even a little bit of it. But they were all life-threatening. Although Zhang Xiaohua's cultivation had improved greatly in the restriction at the core of the Huansu, he was like a baby who had a mountain of gold and didn't know how to spend it. Although his vital energy was sufficient and his divine sense was comparable to Nun Jingyi's, when he thought about how Nun Jingyi could easily stop Shimujuan's shocking sword with her divine sense, Zhang Xiaohua was quite nervous. He knew very well that he definitely didn't have that kind of cultivation. Xia Qing and the rest were all injured, so their movements were not very fast. They slowly urged the horses under them to move and adjust their breathing on the back of the horses. When they were far away from Huansu and saw the sky, it was already gradually getting dark. It wasn't until everyone set up camp and rested on a relatively flat ground that Zhang Xiaohua racked his brains and thought of a stupid idea. That was to take out all the Dharma artifacts related to the immortal path, find a place, and bury them. He didn't have a single Dharma artifact on him. Let's see what Nun Jingyi could find. Zhang Xiaohua was the guardian disciple of Mo Ningong. Of course, he wouldn't stay with the disciples of Rui Jin Palace. Xia Qing and the others were female disciples, so they couldn't stay with Zhang Xiaohua. Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua's tent was set up alone beside a mountain rock. Looking at the night sky, the injured female disciples stayed in the tent to adjust their breathing. The disciples of Rui Jin Palace lit a bonfire in the distance and patrolled. Zhang Xiaohua scanned with her divine sense and directly went underground. After walking for a short distance, she found a place to hide. She took out all the things on her body, chasing dream, belt, bracelet, money pouch, and so on, and hid them all. Then, she set up a restriction to prevent them from being discovered. At the same time, Zhang Xiaohua secretly prayed in her heart, "May the passing gods bless me. These are all this little one's belongings. Please don't let anyone discover them." After everything was done, Zhang Xiaohua was about to leave. Suddenly, her heart skipped a beat as she remembered the bracelet on her arm. This was her biggest secret. Should she hide this bracelet as well? Taking off the bracelet from her arm, Zhang Xiaohua looked at the thing that she had long ignored. It was made of a dark material, and she seemed to be able to see the faint starlight inside. She scanned it with her divine sense, but there wasn't any fluctuation of heaven and earth yuan qi. When she used her divine sense to invade it, she didn't find any abnormalities. It was no different from an ordinary object. Let's take a gamble. My divine sense can't discover this thing. Maybe Abbess Jingyi can't see it either. Zhang Xiaohua comforted herself. After all, this was her most precious thing. She didn't feel at ease leaving it somewhere else. I forgot. Previously, when Senior Wan Wuxin taught me how to refine the stone tablet, she mentioned the origin energy. At that time, I couldn't spit it out. Now that my cultivation has improved, I feel that it's possible. Should I refine the stone tablet? I should also see what's inside. If this place is discovered by others in the future, won't I not even know what's inside? After making up her mind, Zhang Xiaohua put the bracelet on her arm and took the jade tablet out of her belt. She looked around and scanned with her divine sense. She found a small cave in the distance. She made a hand seal and flew over. Zhang Xiaohua sat down cross-legged. She stretched out her palm and placed it on the stone tablet that had turned light gold. She silently recited the method to refine the stone tablet. She refined the stone tablet once more. Everything happened naturally. According to Wan Wuxin's instructions, Zhang Xiaohua opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of hazy light gold origin energy. It scattered on the stone tablet. Instantly, the stone tablet flashed with a sparkling light. A feeling of freedom came from the stone tablet. At the same time, a voice sounded again. Fellow Taoist, with your cultivation, this stone tablet can be considered to have been refined by you. Fellow Taoist, you've come from afar, so I invited you in because I had no other choice. Perhaps it wasn't your intention. However, this stone tablet was obtained by I from the Heaven Play 5 Elements formation. Although the things inside are precious, they're different from what I learned. It's fate that I'm giving it to you now. Fellow Taoist, please don't be in a hurry to comprehend it. Just take a look first. It won't be too late to comprehend it when you have the opportunity in the future. Please come in and have a chat. Then, the voice disappeared without a trace. Gosh, Zhang Xiaohua laughed secretly. Isn't that Wan Wuxin's voice? And judging from the meaning of that voice, it was mine before I entered the passageway. This Wan Wuxin is really scheming. First, he left his voice in the stone tablet and let me see the things inside the stone tablet so that I'm tempted. Then, He let me enter the passageway. But who knew that I don't have the ability to refine this stone tablet at all? Of course, I don't know anything about the things inside. But, what good things are left in the stone tablet? Even Wan Wuxin, the founder of the immortal Tao, said that it's precious. Zhang Xiaohua's curiosity was greatly aroused. She penetrated her divine sense into the stone tablet. She saw that the stone tablet was also an empty place. She couldn't see anything. Could it be that Senior Huan is lying? Just as Zhang Xiaohua was puzzled, a transparent human figure suddenly appeared in the empty space of the stone tablet. That human figure waved his hand and a small sword flew out from his hand. Once the small sword entered the air, it multiplied from 1 to 10, then from 10 to 100, and from 100 to 1,000. In the blink of an eye, the sky was filled with sword light dancing. Could it be that there were already more than 10,000 of them? At the same time, a flow flowed into Zhang Xiaohua's mind. When Zhang Xiaohua digested the flow, she couldn't help but be overjoyed. This flow recorded the technique of controlling the sword. It was called sword rendition of the world. And this illusory sword technique was only the first level of the sword technique. Who knew how many levels there were after that? How could this not make Zhang Xiaohua ecstatic? His own driving of chasing dream was merely based on a few nameless flying sword moves. Based on his own exploration, it was basically a wild fox meditation. It was fine for him to bully martial artists normally, but if he met someone with superior martial arts, he would be helpless. It was simply impossible for him to have the magical power of 10,000 swords in the metal element formation. And this sword rendition of the world, although the name was as vulgar as weapon rendition of the world, the content inside could not be mentioned in the same breath. The realm of 10,000 swords that Zhang Xiaohua dreamed of was only the first level of the sword technique. It was no wonder that even Wan Wuxin praised it as precious. After Zhang Xiaohua penetrated her divine sense into the stone tablet, she carefully looked at the technique of the transparent human figure several times. After she was sure that she had memorized it, Zhang Xiaohua reluctantly put the stone tablet into her belt and put it into the restriction again. However, this time, although Zhang Xiaohua was separated by the restriction, she could still feel the position of the stone tablet. It was as if she could see it herself. Good. Zhang Xiaohua praised in her heart. So refining the stone tablet has such benefits? I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to find this place. Chapter 933. When Zhang Xiaohua sensed the stone steel's location and was about to leave, his heart suddenly skipped a beat. He seemed to have sensed something, but after thinking about it, he couldn't figure out what it was. Could it be another warning sign? Zhang Xiaohua was puzzled. He burrowed into the ground and headed back. When he saw the bonfire in the Rui Jin Hall, he suddenly realized something. I was wondering why it was so strange. It seems like I only sensed the stone tablet's location, but I didn't sense any fluctuations from the stone tablet. This is the consequence of refining the stone tablet. Zhang Xiaohua was overjoyed, but he couldn't make up his mind. After all, he was the one who refined the stone tablet. It wasn't strange for him to be able to sense the stone tablet without using the energy fluctuations. However, he didn't know if others, such as Nun Jingyi, would be able to sense the stone tablet's fluctuations with their divine senses. This isn't easy to try. Zhang Xiaohua was a little depressed. It would be best if I could conceal it. If I can't, wouldn't I be losing money? Moreover, the refining method of each artifact is different. The method of refining the stone tablet probably won't work on other artifacts. It's better to get past Nun Jingyi first. It was a quiet night. Zhang Xiaohua calmly comprehended the first stage of the Sword of the World. The chant matched with the human figure in the stone tablet. After tasting it, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but scratch his ears and cheeks. He just wanted to follow the instructions of the technique and control chasing dream. He wanted to create thousands of sword shadows in the air. The next morning, Zhang Xiaohua escaped from the tent and found a secluded place to practice the Big Dipper Divine Fist. The Big Dipper Divine Fist actually increased by 3 stages, which made Zhang Xiaohua very happy. Then, Zhang Xiaohua thought of using the illusion breaker eyes to look at his tempered bones. It was a pity that the illusion breaker eyes had absorbed the power of the lightning and was resting. No matter how Zhang Xiaohua tried to activate the core in his Naiwan palace, it didn't respond. Ha, the fragrant religion is truly my blessed land. I've gained a lot in the Yulon Grand Canyon, and my cultivation has also increased in the ruins of Huan. Although I didn't get the Earth's core, but I don't have any regrets. After all, on the lingering fragrance peak, I met the dream that I looked forward to the most. Zhang Xiaohua's heart was filled with joy. When he returned to the tent, he bumped into the disciples of the Ruijin Palace Hall. This ordinary action made the disciples of the Ruijin Palace feel flattered and flattered. Xia Qing curled her lips and despised him even more. Everyone set off, and after traveling for another half a day, they arrived at a dangerous place. Between the crevices of 2 tall mountains, there was a gurgling stream. On the left side of the stream, there was a winding path that passed through the foot of the mountain. When Zhang Xiaohua passed through here that day, he had killed Shimujuan. He was amazed at the cruelty of the battle of the immortal Tao and didn't pay attention to the dangers of the terrain. Now that his cultivation had improved greatly, the range of his divine sense had also increased greatly. Therefore, before he got close to the winding path, he was shocked. When he released his divine sense, although he couldn't see the foot of the mountain clearly, a person hiding in the green grass in the stream caught his attention. "Io, who is setting up this ambush?" Zhang Xiaohua frowned slightly. As far as he knew, other than Lord Jingzha's side, there was only the Tenryu sect. He had seen these 2 groups of people. As for the other sects, such as the Dalan Temple and the Righteous Alliance, Zhang Xiaohua didn't think that they were obedient and wouldn't send people to infiltrate the fragrant religion. Could it be that this group of people is together with the 2 people we met in Huansu? As Zhang Xiaohua thought, he followed behind the group and walked forward slowly. He was still leaning over the David's deer, his divine sense probing forward from time to time, hoping to see more. As expected, before they arrived at the tall mountain, Zhang Xiaohua had already discovered a few people on the cliff. Those people were also quietly lying on the ground, there were dozens of huge rocks in front of them. Looking at their posture, it was similar to the attack of the giant ape in the Yulon Grand Canyon. Zhang Xiaohua looked at his divine sense anxiously. He really didn't know how to warn Xia Qing and the rest. Suddenly, a sense of danger rose in his heart. A familiar divine sense spread out in front of him. Abyss Jing Yi. Zhang Xiaohua was shocked and immediately retracted his divine sense. He silently used the nameless incantation to conceal his cultivation and divine sense, but it was still the same as before. Although Zhang Xiaohua retracted his divine sense, his eyes were still half open, slightly slanting to look at the tall mountain. After a while, he didn't see any movement at the top of the mountain, but Xia Qing and the rest walked to the bottom of the cliff. At this moment, the person who was leaning over the grass leaped out. With a wave of his left arm, a black light was flung out from his arm, directly shooting towards the disciples of the Sharp Gold Palace who were caught off guard. At the same time, the human figures on the tall mountain also straightened up, forming groups of a few people. They put their hands on the huge rocks and shouted in unison, wanting to push the huge rocks down. However, before they could exert enough strength, they saw a figure suddenly rise from an inconceivable place, leaping high and landing on the huge rocks in front of them. Ah! The few people were shocked. When they looked carefully, it was a white-haired old woman wearing a palace robe. Run! One of them was very clever. When the others were still thinking about how this person appeared, he had already retreated, shouted loudly, and turned around to flee to the side. When the person fled, the rest of the people also came to their senses. At this time, how could they guess how this person came up or who she was? As a result, all of them scattered like monkeys when the tree falls, fleeing in all directions. The old woman in the palace robe wasn't in a hurry. With a wave of her hand, a small sword broke through the air, piercing towards the back of one of the people's neck at lightning speed. That person's martial arts was also very strong. When he heard the sound of wind behind him, he didn't turn his head. Instead, he raised his hand, and the short sword in his hand struck towards the small sword. However, there was a loophole in the attack. Before the short sword hit, the small sword suddenly rose up and pierced the back of the person's head. Moreover, as the old woman in the palace robe moved her finger slightly, the small sword was pulled out from the back of the person's head, and with a whoosh, it attacked another person in another direction. Under the mysterious means of the old woman in the palace robe, the few people on the top of the mountain turned into vengeful spirits in just a moment. The old woman moved her finger again, and the small sword flew back from the back of the last person's neck. The end of the small sword was connected to the old woman's finger by a very thin transparent silk thread. At the bottom of the mountain, although the ambushers came prepared, they appeared from the water after all. The sound first alarmed the disciples of the Rue Jean Palace. Although they were caught off guard, they still managed to dodge the attack in a hurry, and only suffered a slight injury. The ambushers originally wanted to attract everyone's attention. Seeing that the ambush failed, they only exchanged a few blows with the disciples of the Rue Jean Palace. They didn't see any boulders falling from the mountain, so they knew that things had changed. Therefore, they didn't continue to fight and turned to escape. As for Zhang Xiaohua, she stole a glance at everything on the mountain. When she saw Nun Jingyi driving the flying sword and using the small sword to kill the enemy, which was similar to the method she used previously, she couldn't help but feel relieved. She felt that although Nun Jingyi was skillful in using her divine sense, which was the secret technique of the incense cult, in the way of controlling the sword, it seemed that she wasn't much better than her. The flying sword was abnormally fast, but it didn't have any moves to speak of, and it didn't transform into any sword light. Nun Jingyi killed the enemy very quickly. By the time the person who ambushed her ran away, she had already floated down from the cliff. Nun Jingyi's figure was mysterious. Like a dancing white lotus, she floated lightly in the air and gradually slid down. In everyone's eyes, wasn't she a falling fairy? Had she already left the realm of martial arts? Sect leader. The disciples of the Rue Jean Palace, Xia Qing, and the others were shocked. They hurriedly dismounted from their horses and stood respectfully on the ground. Behind Xia Qing and the others, the ambushers turned and fled in the direction of Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua stole a glance at the falling figure of Nun Jingyi and couldn't help but sigh. They're both using the levitation technique, but why is the incense cult's technique so beautiful? I learned the levitation technique from the Misty School. Not to mention the levitation technique, even the imperial wind technique doesn't seem to be as beautiful as her figure. Zhang Xiaohua could already tell that Nun Jingyi was using the levitation technique. However, she actually dared to use the levitation technique to jump down from such a high cliff. This was beyond Zhang Xiaohua's expectations. Back then, Zhang Xiaohua only dared to show off her ability after learning the imperial wind technique. While she was thinking, the ambusher had already rushed to the front of Zhang Xiaohua's David's deer. Zhang Xiaohua frowned slightly. She felt that Nun Jingyi's divine sense had already arrived. If she didn't make a move, she would definitely be seen by her. Hence, she stretched out her hand and picked up the great wisdom sword from Huan Huan's back. She lifted her right hand and swung it at the head of the ambusher. That ambusher had also seen Zhang Xiaohua, who was left alone. However, when he saw that she was injured, he didn't put her in his eyes. His purpose was to attract attention, so he let go of Zhang Xiaohua and directly attacked the disciples of the Rue Jean Palace. At this moment, when he saw Zhang Xiaohua weakly swinging a sword embryo at him, he raised his sword in disdain and wanted to block it. However, when their weapons collided, an unparalleled force attacked him. Before he could circulate his energy, he felt a pain in his hand. The webbing between his thumb and index finger had already split open. His sword was also shattered. His chest was also shaken, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. That person was horrified. This person who seemed to be injured was actually a great expert who was even more brilliant than the disciples of the Rui Jin Palace. However, at this moment, the sword embryo that was incomparably heavy in the eyes of that person was once again in Zhang Xiaohua's hand. She swung it like a lamp and smashed it towards that person's chest again. Ren Xiaoyao. Spare his life. Not far away, Nun Jingyi's voice sounded. At the same time, a divine sense also approached from afar like a python and wrapped around Zhang Xiaohua's great wisdom heavy sword. Zhang Xiaohua didn't dare to release her divine sense, but she could still feel Nun Jingyi's divine sense on her arm. Although the force was not great, it still surprised Zhang Xiaohua once again. Isn't divine sense unable to move ordinary weapons? Even my divine sense can't enter the great wisdom heavy sword. How did Nun Jingyi do it? Chapter 934. Nun Jingyi's spiritual sense wasn't strong and Zhang Xiaohua could easily neutralize it. However, how could he disobey Lord Sect Leader's orders? Zhang Xiaohua took the opportunity to retrieve the great wisdom sword. At this moment, the disciples of the sharp golden hall who were chasing after the sneak attacker arrived. However, just as Zhang Xiaohua placed the great wisdom sword on Huanhuan's back, the sneak attacker who was lying on the ground looked at Nun Jingyi who was flying down from afar and the disciples of the sharp golden hall who were close by. He sneered and clenched his teeth without leaving a trace. In an instant, a stream of black blood flowed down from the corner of his mouth. His body tilted and fell to the ground weakly. Nun Jingyi's spiritual sense left Zhang Xiaohua's great wisdom sword and scanned the surroundings before withdrawing. When the disciples of the sharp golden hall picked up the sneak attacker from the ground, he was already dead. The disciples of the sharp golden hall had no choice but to bring the corpse to Xiaqing and the others. When Nun Jingyi landed from the sky, Zhang Xiaohua, who was at the back of the group, also rushed to the front. He followed Xiaqing and the others to pay respects to Lord Sect Leader. Nun Jingyi waved her hand and asked, Xiaqing, is there any change in the Huan ruins? Why did you send out the emergency signal again and again? Xiaqing didn't dare to delay and quickly told her about the changes in the Huan ruins. Before Xiaqing could finish, Nun Jingyi's expression changed drastically and she said, all of you, rest here. We will talk after I go to the Huan ruins. After speaking, she floated up and used the levitation technique to head to the Huan ruins. Reporting to Lord Sect Leader. This disciple is willing to accompany Lord Sect Leader. Xiaqing stood up and shouted. Nun Jingyi said impatiently, all of you are seriously injured. You should rest here and recuperate. There is no need to follow me. We will talk after I return. As he spoke, he no longer paid any attention to the crowd. His figure floated up and headed in the direction of Huansu. Looking at Nun Jingyi floating in the air like an immortal, Xiaqing and the others were full of admiration. However, Zhang Xiaohua criticized her in his heart, she's just so. He, the great change in Huansu is the most important thing for Lord Hierarch. If she wants to rush to Huansu, she'll naturally use the method she's best at. Martial Dao's lightness skill is not her first choice. It seems that the levitation skill is Nun Jingyi's ultimate lightness skill. Ever since Zhang Xiaohua saw Nun Jingyi's powerful spiritual sense and her exquisite control over it, she felt inferior. However, when she saw Nun Jingyi only knew the levitation technique, she didn't know how to fly, she didn't know how she could fly's flying technique, was right. Seeing Lord Sect Leader leave in a hurry, Xiaqing and the others followed Lord Sect Leader's orders and prepared to rest. Of course, this was a dangerous place. Although some of the ambushing enemies had been easily killed by Nun Jingyi, there was no guarantee that there would be a second wave. Therefore, everyone still retreated a distance and waited for Nun Jingyi's return. At this time, far away from the fragrant religion, in a beautiful mountain villa, there were a dozen people sitting in a hall. In front of each person was a table filled with fine wine and delicacies. In front of the hall was a spacious space, and there were another dozen or so beautiful dancers. They danced gracefully, and the sound of bamboo instruments could be heard all around. It was a beautiful scene. When the music ended, the dancers stopped. A handsome man in his 50s with dark hair and a handsome face laughed loudly. He waved his hand and the dancers retreated. Even the musicians left quietly. The hall was silent. The man picked up the wine cup on the table, stood up, and said, "Longting Villa hasn't been so lively for a long time. It's an honor to have all of you here. Now that the singing and dancing have stopped, let's take a break. Come, let me propose a toast to all of you." The other 10 people also raised their cups and said, "How can we not come when Villa Lord Long summoned us? Come, 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 we also respect Villa Lord Long." As they spoke, they all drank the wine in their cups. Then, a group of disciples in brocade clothes came up from the side. They held pots in their hands and filled everyone's cups. Then, they silently retreated to the back. Then, an old man in purple clothes, who was sitting not far away, also stood up. He held his wine cup and said with a smile, "Although there are many disputes in the southern Wulin, generally speaking, we live in harmony. Villa Lord Long has put a lot of effort into this. Now, more than 10 sect leaders and leaders have gathered together. It's not easy. This old man is not talented, but on behalf of all the sects, I propose a toast to Villa Lord Long." Very good. The people around him clapped their hands. Villa Lord Long stood up with a smile and also raised his cup. He said, "The singing and dancing are all because of the efforts of all of you. Longting Villa is just doing its duty. How can we have other forces? The Moon Sea sect is the real power in the southern Wulin. Sect leader Su is too modest. Come, let's drink together." The people around him laughed and said, "Let's drink together, let's drink together." Then, they raised their cups and drank the wine together. Afterward, the guests and the host drank and chatted happily. When they were drunk, Manor Master Long put down his cup and sighed. He said, "Actually, I wanted to invite all of you to have a chat. It's just that," sigh, sect leader Su of the Moon Sea sect said curiously, "Villa Lord Long. Did something happen to you? If there's anything you need us to do, just tell us." The others also stopped drinking and listened to Villa Lord Long's explanation. Unexpectedly, Villa Lord Long shook his head and said with a smile, "Didn't I just say that the southern Wulin works together? How can there be anything that my Longting Villa can't deal with? It's just that. Cough, cough, forget it. It's all in the past. Come, everyone, let's drink." Villa Lord Long raised his cup and wanted to persuade them to drink, but sect leader Su didn't listen and said with a frown, "Villa Lord Long, I'm older than you, and I want to talk to you. Since you have something on your mind, why don't you say it? Even if we can't help you, maybe we can give you an idea." Everyone in the room laughed and said, "That's right. Villa Lord Long, you don't treat us as friends anymore." "Not at all, not at all." Villa Lord Long laughed, "There's nothing difficult. I just thought of some trivial things in the past. If it weren't for those annoying things, we would have been drinking and chatting happily. Come, let's drink this cup and talk later." Okay. Everyone raised their cups. After that, Manor Master Long put down his wine cup and said with an ashamed expression, "Actually, everyone knows about this matter. I didn't hide it from everyone. A long time ago, my son went to Rejuvenation Valley to ask for her hand in marriage. However, he was defeated by an unknown boy, ha ha ha. Sect leader Su laughed and waved his hand. I was wondering what happened. So it's such a small matter. At that time, my Moon Sea sect also had a few young and handsome men. They went there energetically, but they also returned in defeat. It's nothing, heh heh. Manor Master Long chuckled. Sect Master Su is magnanimous. You already have many children and grandchildren, so of course you don't care about these things. However, my unfilial son is dispirited after this blow. He even sent people to inquire about Rejuvenation Valley. At this time, a person next to him also interrupted. Young Master Long is indeed an infatuated person. Villa Lord Long is so lucky. Villa Lord Long almost rolled his eyes. He didn't know what his son's infatuation had to do with his good fortune as a father, but he only smiled. Sect leader Zhou must be joking. Rejuvenation Valley's third miss already has a husband, but my son is still thinking about her. It's really inappropriate. The other person thought for a long time, but still said, if Villa Lord Long didn't mention it, I would have forgotten. Back then, my unfilial son also went there full of expectations. However, before he could enter the arena, he ran into Brother Zhou's son. In the end, the two of them sparred in private and injured each other. Neither of them went up. Ha, that's right. Brother Yuan is right. The man from before also laughed. However, even if our two brats went up the arena, they wouldn't be able to withstand 3 moves from young Master Long. When this was said, sect leader Su of Moon Sea sect frowned. I heard that Dragon 5th was also knocked out of the arena by that unknown brat in 3 moves. I just don't know who that unknown brat is. Rejuvenation Valley's commander Nya didn't announce it in the Jianghu. That's right, not only did he not announce it, but sect leader Su also doesn't know. He didn't even hold a wedding. Why is that? Sect leader Su was stunned. The martial arts competition for a spouse is over. Why didn't they hold a wedding? Commander Nya is really muddle-headed. At this time, Villa Lord Long shook his head. Sect leader Su still doesn't care enough about the affairs of the Jianghu. Rejuvenation Valley didn't hold a wedding. After the martial arts competition for a spouse, his son-in-law didn't even show his face. He didn't even attend the banquet afterwards. Isn't this looking down on the handsome martial artists who went to the martial arts competition for a spouse? More than that. Villa Lord Long added oil to the fire. Commander Nya only said that the martial arts competition for a spouse was over. Rejuvenation Valley's third young miss is still young, and that unknown brat is also young and not suitable for marriage, so he threw this matter aside. He didn't know that his careless decision not only hurt the hearts of many young people like my son, but also damaged the reputation of the southern Jianghu. Those handsome martial artists who came from afar, who didn't say that our southern Jianghu is untrustworthy. Sect leader Su was somewhat displeased and shouted, these years, Rejuvenation Valley relied on the fragrance cult as their backing and didn't follow the morals of the Jianghu in many things. They owe us a lot in terms of etiquette. Right, this time, the fragrance cult said that they wouldn't pay attention to Rejuvenation Valley for 10 years. Is it because they know some of Rejuvenation Valley's evil deeds? To teach Rejuvenation Valley a lesson? Villa Lord Long clapped his hands and said, sect leader Su is indeed perceptive. That's exactly the case. Think about it, just a martial arts competition for a spouse has caused so much trouble for us. Who knows how many disgusting things have happened before? The fragrance cult's punishment is a warning to Rejuvenation Valley. It really should be. A few years ago, this old man had something to ask of Rejuvenation Valley. I wanted to ask for a medicinal pill, but Commander Nya flatly refused. This really made this old man lose face. At this point, sect leader Zhou of the Flying Fish Gang probed, Villa Lord Long, do you think the fragrance cult will really ignore Rejuvenation Valley for 10 years? Chapter 935. Of course. Long Zhuangzi said in a serious tone, the fragrant religion has a lot of face. How can they go back on their words? Even if someone destroys Rejuvenation Valley, the fragrant cult won't say a word. Hearing this, a few people had strange expressions. However, they didn't say anything. They only looked at each other and exchanged glances. One of them smiled and said, Rejuvenation Valley has worked with the fragrant cult for so many years. There should be some feelings between them. Who would really go against the Rejuvenation Valley? That's not right. Manor Master Long shook his head. It's just a partnership. If Valley Master Peng's frozen ice garden can get in touch with the fragrant cult, they can also replace Rejuvenation Valley. Can your frigid ice garden also cultivate medicinal herbs and send out medicine boys? Yes, not only Valley Master Peng, but Valley Master Yen and Sect Master Zhang also have this opportunity. Of course, this is under the condition that Rejuvenation Valley can no longer work with the fragrant cult. Manor Master Long's voice was low. He then raised his cup and said, Come, let's not talk so much. It's not easy for us to gather here. Let's drink. Ha, come, Manor Master Long. Although everyone had their own thoughts, they all smiled and raised their cups to toast. After a few rounds of drinking, they talked about some interesting things in the martial world. Unknowingly, the topic turned to Rejuvenation Valley and the martial arts competition before the new year. At this time, Sect Master Zhou of the Flying Fish Sect thought for a moment. He looked at Sect Master Yuan of the Raging Waves Sect and said, Actually, there's something I don't know if I should say. Brother Zhou, that's not right. What's wrong? This. Actually, I won't hide it from everyone. Just now, Brother Yuan also said that my son and Brother Zhou's son also went to the martial competition to find a spouse. When he came back, he told me something. I feel that this Rejuvenation Valley's martial competition for a spouse has a lot of filthy aspects. Perhaps it is purely a scam, and Commander Nya is just playing to the gallery to make Rejuvenation Valley famous? Manor Master Long and Sect Master Su were also very interested. There was no need to mention the others. They all asked, this. Is there a reason behind this? Seeing that everyone was paying attention, gang leader Zhou couldn't help but feel a little nervous, as if he regretted saying it. He smiled and said, Actually, Brother Yuan also knows about this. Don't you think so, Brother Yuan? Well. When Sect Leader Zhou of Flying Fish Sect mentioned him, Sect Leader Yuan of Raging Wave Sect frowned and said with a smile, My son came back from Rejuvenation Valley and told me many things. I wonder which one Brother Zhou is talking about. Gang Leader Zhou felt a bit helpless when Gang Leader Yuan pushed the topic to him. However, he looked at Manor Master Long and Cult Leader Su, who were sitting at the head of the table. He licked his lips and said, It's just a child's speculation. If what we say is different from the truth, won't Rejuvenation Valley bear a grudge against us? Ha ha ha, Manor Master Long laughed loudly. You worry too much, Gang Leader Zhou. Not to mention that everyone here is on good terms with the martial arts world in the south. They definitely won't say what you said. Yes, even if there are some things, they definitely won't say it was you who said it. Moreover, Brother Zhou, even if you don't say it, do you think there's a wall in this world that doesn't have a crack? Manor Master Long chuckled and said, Moreover, Brother Zhou, do you think Rejuvenation Valley still has the mind to worry about other things at this time? I'm afraid that the order from the Cult of Fragrance has already thrown them into a panic. After listening to Manor Master Long's explanation, Gang Leader Zhou's mood was greatly relieved. He said with a smile, After all, Rejuvenation Valley has been like a fox pretending to be a tiger for so long. I have no choice but to be cautious. Everyone, please forgive me. Come, I'll punish myself with a cup. As he said this, he raised his cup and drank it in one gulp. Then, he told them about how Zhou Tao and Yuan Guiyun had met Zhang Xiaohua and Nye Qianyu. Finally, he added, Everyone, you see, it's been a long time since the martial arts competition for a spouse. This third Miss of Rejuvenation Valley is still playing with this Ren Xiaoyao. She doesn't take the martial arts competition for a spouse seriously at all. Moreover, at the end of the martial arts competition for a spouse, that Ren Xiaoyao clearly doesn't have any qualifications, but Old Man Yu and Old Man Nia actually let him onto the stage. It's obvious that this is a trap. No one would believe it if they hadn't already done something. As soon as he said this, the crowd was in an uproar. Manor Master Long's expression didn't change. He turned his head and asked, "Gang Leader Yuan, is what Gang Leader Zhou said true?" Gang Leader Yuan of the Raging Wave Gang said with a wry smile, "My son also said the same thing when he went back. I felt that this was a serious matter, so I didn't dare to make any mistakes. It wasn't until today that I dared to tell Gang Leader Zhou, Rejuvenation Valley has gone too far." Behind him, Valley Master Peng slammed the table and stood up. He said angrily, "Before the new year, my Cold Ice Garden also had disciples who went. They really sincerely admired the reputation of Rejuvenation Valley's third miss. But Marshal Nia actually treated us like this." "That's right." The people behind him also echoed. Most of them were from sects that cultivated medicinal herbs. Then, everyone's gazes turned to Manor Master Long, and Manor Master Long looked at Cult Leader Su beside him. Cult Leader Su's face was also filled with rage. He slammed the table and shouted, "What a disgrace! How can our southern martial arts world have such a shameless sect? If we don't teach Rejuvenation Valley a lesson, I'm afraid they'll do even worse things in the future." "That's right." Manor Master Long continued, "Isn't it because of Rejuvenation Valley's evil deeds that the incense cult lost all face? That's why they spread the news that they'll ignore Rejuvenation Valley's survival for 10 years. Then, he looked at the scene and said with a smile, "Actually, this is also a message from the incense cult to the martial arts world. They want to find another sect that can replace Rejuvenation Valley. Don't you all know?" "Hee, don't say that you don't have such thoughts." Valley Master Peng and the others looked a little embarrassed. They looked at each other and said, "To be honest, Manor Master Long, we've also thought about the meaning behind this. It's just that, our sects are weak and alone. How can we be a match for Rejuvenation Valley? Moreover, we don't have a valid reason. We're afraid that we'll provoke the other sects in the martial arts world. We can't even fight against Rejuvenation Valley, let alone some Jade Foundation alliance." Hee, it's just a mere Jade Foundation alliance. Do you think we'll be afraid of it if we join forces? When he said this, Valley Master Peng and the others' eyes were filled with fervor. But, they were still a little hesitant. Valley Master Peng cupped his hands and said, "Thank you for your righteousness, Manor Master Long. But, to be able to cooperate with the incense cult, there can only be one sect. Our sect's strength is about the same." That's easy to say. Manor Master Long seemed to have thought it through. He waved his hand and said, "As long as we take down Rejuvenation Valley first, 10 years later, no, it's now. Whoever contributes the most in this dispute will be given the title. All of us here will give our full support." Hee, not only our support, as long as we take down Rejuvenation Valley, the things in the valley will be given to anyone here. Wouldn't it be equivalent to Rejuvenation Valley's current strength? Good. Valley Master Peng and the others didn't say it out loud. They were all cheering in their hearts. Although Rejuvenation Valley was on good terms with many sects in the southern martial arts world, they had also offended and suppressed many of them. In the martial arts world where everyone was scheming against each other, how could there be the best of both worlds? Valley Master Peng looked at the people around him and walked out of the crowd with a wine cup in his hand. He said with a smile, "Since Manor Master Long is so righteous, I'll toast you on behalf of everyone. Let's follow your plan." Manor Master Long smiled and also raised his cup. He drank it in one gulp and said, "Where did my plan come from? It's only because I listened to Sect Leader Zhou's words and got Sect Leader Su's support that I thought of it on the spot. Manner Master, you don't have to be so polite. Sect leader Su said with a smile, I'm old and don't care about the affairs of the martial arts world. Otherwise, I would have taught this Rejuvenation Valley a lesson with you. The way Marshal Nye does things, cough, cough, is really unreliable. Isn't it? It's precisely because he has lost face for the southern martial arts world. If we expose this guy's face now, it will also show that the southern sects are impartial. When the entire martial arts world finds out the truth, how can the entire southern martial arts world face our peers in the martial arts world? Then, everyone spoke one after another. They raised the significance of exposing Rejuvenation Valley's conspiracy again and again. In the end, they unanimously agreed that Rejuvenation Valley was the scum of the southern martial arts world. If they weren't eradicated early, it would lead to a disaster in the future. Good. Manner Master Long clapped his hands and said, it's rare for martial arts friends to be so righteous. I'm really proud to know all of you. Since that's the case, we'll do something according to the will of the heavens. We're willing to be the leader of this matter. We'll expose Marshal Nye's face and bring justice to the entire martial arts world. Great. Everyone clapped their hands. Manner Master Long waved his hand and the disciples all left. He said, although this is a righteous action, we still need to prepare for a rainy day. We still need to make a detailed plan. Yes. We'll listen to Manner Master's arrangement. Under the applause of the crowd, Manner Master Long slowly discussed the various details with the crowd. Although it was rushed, the details were also considered very carefully. Back at Rejuvenation Valley, a storm was brewing as well. In the 100 Herb Hall, the leaders of the Jade Foundation Alliance were all present. Beside them were a few sects that had been through thick and thin with Rejuvenation Valley. Among them, the Deer Cry sect was at the top. Deer Cry sect's Yu Yen frowned and said, Brother Nya, the order to spread the incense cult is strange. If it's really as you said, and the medicine boy made a mistake this time, this idea was my idea. Speaking of which, it's really, of course. Before Yu Yen finished speaking, Swallowtail Mountain Xingzhizhu, who was stationed in Ingstud Farm, shouted, it was originally a good opportunity. Why did you have to talk about repaying a debt of gratitude? Stuffing someone you don't know into the incense cult. If I find out, ignoring him for 10 years is a small matter. I'll directly, Old Six, Weapon Forging Sect Si Yakong frowned and said, shut up first. We haven't figured out the reason for this matter yet. Don't complain. Ren Xiaoxia has been good to our Jade Foundation Alliance and has benefited Rejuvenation Valley greatly. However, it's just a little bit of help. How can we ignore it? But, it's not just a little bit of help. He has offended the incense cult. If it weren't for that bastard, how could such a good thing have ended up like this? Chapter 936. In the face of everyone's accusations, Valley Master Nya remained silent. Nye Qianyu, who was seated below, had tears in her eyes, looking extremely aggrieved. Nye Qianrong, who was beside her, held her hand as if she was consoling her. After another round of accusations, Nye Qianyu couldn't help but stand up and walk to the front of the hall. She bowed and said, Uncle Masters, it's all my fault for not handling the situation properly and bringing disaster to Rejuvenation Valley. But I don't think it's Brother Ren who caused this. Brother Ren's martial arts are powerful and he's extremely intelligent. Why, Sai, things have already come to this. Little you, why are you still speaking up for Ren Xiaoyao? Zhen Xian of the Weapon Refining Sect was a little angry. That's enough. Valley Master Nya stood up and waved his hand. Brothers, I've invited all of you here not to investigate the cause of this matter. If that's the case, Rejuvenation Valley can just close our doors and look for him ourselves. Why do we have to, Sai, although Ren Xiaoxia might be one of the reasons, Rejuvenation Valley is indeed indebted to him. We can't repay him and can only do this. Of course, if any of you feel that I've done something wrong and dragged the entire Jade Foundation Alliance down with me, feel free to, second brother. Weapon Refining Sect Si Yakong reprimanded, what are you saying? We've been brothers for so many years. If we're afraid of causing trouble, why would we be sitting here? We've brought many of our sect's elites. Aren't you trying to disappoint us by saying such things? Valley Master Nya bowed to the ground and said gratefully, this. Thank you for your reminder, big brother. I was a little rash just now. Please forgive me. Don't. There's nothing to forgive. What's important is to get through this crisis. Ing Zhizhu and the rest smiled and didn't think much of it. In the snowball stud farm, Zhou Xiqing said in a low voice, perhaps things aren't as dangerous as you think, second brother. Rejuvenation Valley's reputation in the pugilistic world has always been excellent. Even their status isn't something that the other sects in our Jade Foundation Alliance can compare to. The incense cult is only giving them a warning this time. Valley Head Nya sighed. Brothers Wu's words are reasonable, but when Rejuvenation Valley befriended some sects, they must have offended many sects as well. Actually, even without these factors, a Rejuvenation Valley that has lost the protection of the fragrant cult is still a piece of fat meat in the eyes of many large sects. Second brother, are you talking about that mysterious power from last year? Ma Fuhu of Soaring Dragon Mountain's Fuhu Ranch asked in a low voice. It's just a guess. Valley Master Nya nodded slightly. Ever since last year's martial arts competition to find a spouse, not even the slightest trace of this mysterious force could be found. Even the Longting Villa couldn't find any clues, let's not go so far. Si Yakong waved his hand and looked down at the hall. He asked curiously, second brother Nya, why isn't your second girl here? You sent me the news, and I rushed over. Could it be that the whale gang is even further away than me? This. Valley Master Nya was a bit tongue-tied. He shook his head and said, a married daughter is like spilled water. Not every daughter is on her parents' side. Let's not worry about her. As he spoke, Valley Master Nya looked at Nya Qianrong and Nya Qianyu, his eyes full of affection. Oh, Si Yakong nodded slightly. He then said, the most important thing right now is to set up Rejuvenation Valley's defenses. Rejuvenation Valley has been at peace for many years, and it's lacking in martial strength. Big brother is right. Valley Master Nya was a bit embarrassed. How about this? I'll teach you the elites of weapon forging sect that I've brought, and the other brothers will also teach you the men under their command. You can decide on the overall layout. First, set up Rejuvenation Valley like an iron bucket. At this point, he suddenly thought of something and said regretfully, it's a pity that although Ren Xiaoyao returned the 5 elements formation to my weapon forging sect, it hasn't been long. The elders in my sect haven't fully comprehended it yet. Otherwise, we could, after Si Yakong expressed his regret, Nya Qianyu asked timidly, eldest martial uncle, that 5 elements formation, is it really as miraculous as you say? Of course. Si Yakong said resolutely. Back then, when my weapon forging sect encountered danger, we relied on that 5 elements formation to overcome it. This is the record of the sect master 2 generations ago. How can it be false? That. Nya Qianyu's face was a bit red. She said in a low voice, your niece is untalented. A few days ago, when I heard what father said, I always wanted to help father, but, your niece doesn't have the strength to truss a chicken. No matter what I do, it's useless. So I thought of the 5 elements Dian formation that big brother Ren taught me. Si Yakong's eyes lit up. He hurriedly asked, so what? So your niece tried to set up the 5 elements Dian formation at the entrance of Rejuvenation Valley, really? Si Yakong stood up with a tang and said, how can this 5 elements great derivation formation be so simple to set up? You, quickly bring me to see it. Seeing that she could do something for Rejuvenation Valley, Nie Qianyu was very excited. Her face was a little red. Nie Qianrong was also very happy. The two of them held hands and brought everyone to the entrance of Rejuvenation Valley. There were a few servant girls at the entrance of the valley, as well as some trees and rocks. It looked a little messy. Those who didn't know would turn their heads left and right to find the location of the Five Elements formation. Si Yakong was pleasantly surprised. He quickly walked to the front of the rocks and took a closer look. After a long while, he sighed and said, "Second brother Nya, I really envy you. Even though your smart daughter doesn't know any martial arts, she alone is equivalent to dozens of people. Eldest martial uncle, is this really useful?" Nie Qianyu pointed at the things on the ground in disbelief and asked, I feel that there are still many areas that are lacking. Even those inexplicable things that Big Brother Ren said at the end, I still don't understand them. Of course it can. Si Yakong said with a smile, these are just rocks. Trees don't move. If they were replaced by strong men who know martial arts, the lethality of their attacks is not something you can imagine. But Nie Qianyu was still worried. I still don't know where to set up the eye of this Five Elements formation. Eye of the formation? Don't know where to set it up. Si Yakong smiled and said, there are 6 great sects in the Jade Foundation Alliance. Even if Rejuvenation Valley doesn't have anyone who is strong in martial arts, the other 5 sects can send out 5 disciples who are strong in martial arts. Isn't that enough? If it really isn't enough, then we old bones will go all out and be the eye of your 5 elements formation. Is that alright? However, your 5 elements formation is still too small. Perhaps you only considered Rejuvenation Valley's own disciples. Now that the Jade Foundation Alliance is here to help, it's better to set up the 5 elements formation in front of the villa. Si Yakong's mood was very good. Valley Master Nya was also very happy when he heard this. He had a smile on his face. He had never thought that Ren Xiaoyao, who had done Rejuvenation Valley a great favor, would have such a remarkable ability. Even his third daughter, who didn't even have the strength to truss a chicken, had exceeded his expectations. But Nie Qianyu was a little anxious. Looking at everyone, she walked to Si Yakong and said with a blush on her face, but Big Brother Ren said that using people as the eye of the formation is just inferior. This 5 elements formation can only fight against 10 people and can't unleash the full power of the 5 elements formation. What? Si Yakong was dumbfounded. This kind of thing, how come I didn't know about it? He didn't give such an explanation in the 5 elements formation that he gave. Eldest senior uncle, please don't blame me. Nie Qianyu couldn't care about anything else now and said apologetically, there are no mistakes in the 5 elements formation that Big Brother Ren copied for you. It was all written by me. It's just that, it's only after eldest senior uncle returned and Big Brother Ren explained the formation to me in detail that's when he told me about it. Ha ha ha. Si Yakong laughed and shook his head. He pointed at Valley Master Nya and said, second brother Nya, you gave birth to a good daughter. Eldest brother, please don't blame me. Valley Master Nya cupped his fists and said, after this matter is over, I will let little you explain everything one by one. Father, Nie Qianyu rebuked him. This is the secret of Big Brother Ren's sect. Without his permission, how would I dare to tell others? A secret that won't be passed on. I don't think so. Si Yakong narrowed his eyes and smiled. Eldest senior uncle Nie Qianyu's face was completely red. Okay, let's not talk about other things. Let's get through the current crisis first. Anyway, Ren Xiaoxia will return in a few years. At that time, I will ask him for some benefits. Si Yakong waved his hand and said. Hearing this, Nie Qianyu's eyes were filled with sorrow. She only said in her heart, if he can return in a few years, can I still think about him day and night? I'm just afraid that, our previous meeting is over and we will never meet again. Seeing Nie Qianyu miserable, Nie Qianrong's heart ached. She walked in front of her sister and patted her shoulder. Nie Qianyu endured the pain in her heart and squeezed out a smile on her face. That's right, little Yu. Then, what did Ren Xiaoxia say to maximize the power of the 5 elements formation? Valley Master Nya saw that his daughter was unhappy and hurriedly changed the topic. This. Nie Qianyu looked at everyone and walked to her father's side. She whispered a few words in his ear. These few words in Valley Master Nye's ears were tantamount to a thunderbolt in the clear sky. He said in disbelief, he really said that. How is this possible? Seeing her father so surprised, Nie Qianyu was also puzzled. She asked curiously, it's just like that. Father, is there anything strange? I was also confused about what Brother Ren said at that time. I don't understand why. If Ren Xiaoxia was not already in the spreading fragrance cult, if he had said this to me at that time, I would never have sent him to the spreading fragrance cult. Father, why is this? Nie Qianyu was even more puzzled. What does it have to do with our Rejuvenation Valley? It's more than just related. Valley Master Nye smiled bitterly. If you didn't mention it now, how could I believe that it was just a coincidence? Coincidence? Nie Qianyu was so shocked that she covered her cherry lips with her hand. Father, I really don't understand what you are saying. Please explain. Chapter 937. Coincidence? It's not just a coincidence. Valley Master Nye smiled bitterly. Then, he looked at the crowd and waved his hand, saying, Brothers, let our subordinates rest first. When little Yu has finished preparing everything, we'll set up a formation in front of Rejuvenation Manor and let those bastards who covet our Rejuvenation Valley see the power of the 5 elements die in formation. Valley Master Nya looked at the 5 sect masters of the Jade Foundation Alliance, Elder Yu of Deer Cry Sect, Nie Qianrong, Yu Zhonglin, and Nie Qianyu. He smiled bitterly and said, Brothers, perhaps you all know that our Rejuvenation Valley has a treasure that can hold down the valley? Treasure that can hold down the valley? Si Yakong and the others were surprised. We've heard of it before. However, it's been a long time and we've never heard second brother mention it. We thought it was just a rumor. Big brother, this treasure that can hold down the valley is real. However, it's always been hidden in a secret place in Rejuvenation Valley and only the valley masters of each generation know about it. Ha, Ingzhizhu laughed. There really is such a treasure. Second brother really hid it well. Yes, second brother, what is this treasure that can hold down the valley? Why are you mentioning it now? Ma Fuhu also laughed. Valley Master Nya ignored the two of them. Instead, he turned to Nie Qianyu affectionately and said, Little Yu, you must remember last year when I asked you to go to that place to get something, right? Yes, of course I remember. Nie Qianyu's face was filled with confusion. She nodded and said, Could it be that it's the treasure that can hold down the valley? Yes, if that's the case, it's no wonder that someone covets it and hunts me down. Valley Master Nya nodded first and then shook his head. That thing is related to the treasure that can hold down the valley, but it's also not. Otherwise, why would our Rejuvenation Valley's treasure be placed outside? Nie Qianyu rolled her eyes and said with a smile, According to father, with that thing, can we find the treasure that can hold down the valley? Si Yakong and the others were enlightened. Only now did they understand why a mysterious force spent so much effort to hunt down Nie Qianyu last year. It was all for this so-called treasure that can hold down the valley. Thus, everyone began to look forward to this treasure. Alright, since Rejuvenation Valley has already reached such a stage, all of you brothers have been through life and death together for many years, and this 5 elements Dian formation is going to use the most powerful treasure in the valley. I will not avoid anything. Everyone, please wait for a moment. Little you, follow me. As she spoke, she strode towards the inner valley of Rejuvenation Valley. Nie Qianrong released Nie Qianyu's hand and nudged her, indicating for her to hurry up and follow her. Nie Qianyu nodded and chased after her. Valley Master Nie led Nie Qianyu into the inner valley without saying a word and went straight to the pill room on the left. They walked all the way to the innermost pill room and pushed the door open. After walking through a few more holes, they came to a wall. In front of the wall was a pill furnace with earth fire below it. Valley Master Nie took the pill furnace and twisted it left and right above the earth fire. No one knew what mechanism he activated, but there was a "kacha" sound. The smooth wall in front of them gradually rose and revealed a small room. Valley Master Nie casually picked up a torch from the wall and jumped into the room. He walked to the front of a stone pillar in the corner. Nie Qianyu followed him and looked at the protruding stone pillar. She found it strange that there was a depression at the top of the stone pillar. It was an irregular shape. Valley Master Nie walked to the front of the stone pillar and passed the torch to Nie Qianyu. He then took out a brocade box. It was the box that Nie Qianyu had risked her life to bring back. Valley Master Nie looked at Nie Qianyu and raised the brocade box for her to see. Then, he opened the brocade box. Inside the brocade box was a small jade box. Valley Master Nie stretched out his finger and tapped on the 4 legs of the jade box. Finally, he tapped on the middle of the jade box and the lid of the jade box opened. Using the light from the torch, Nie Qianyu saw an irregular jade pendant that looked like a stone pillar. Valley Master Nie took out the jade pendant and placed it in the depression of the stone pillar. It was just right. After a while, Valley Master Nie stretched out his palm and placed it on top of the stone pillar. He exerted his energy and pressed it down. A creaking sound was heard and the stone pillar actually sank. Following the sinking of the stone pillar, a small platform rose from the ground. On the platform, there were 5 small brocade boxes that were exactly the same as the previous one. When the platform rose to his chest, Valley Master Nie stopped and picked up a brocade box from the platform. He opened it as usual and smiled as he passed it to Nie Qianyu. He said, "Seeing the 5 brocade boxes here, I think you already know what they are." "Yes, father." Nie Qianyu didn't hide it and frowned. Could it be that this is the 5 elements item that Big Brother Ren mentioned? That's right. Look at this. Valley Master Nie said and took out the item from the brocade box and passed it to Nie Qianyu. Looking at the small blue stone in her hand that was similar to an ordinary jade, Nie Qianyu asked, what 5 elements item is this?" Valley Master Nie smiled and said, "This is called a vitality stone. I heard that it was a common item used by the immortals 10,000 years ago. This blue vitality stone should be the water element of the 5 elements. Vitality stone. This is the vitality stone that Big Brother Ren mentioned." Nie Qianyu said in surprise, "Big Brother Ren said that this item is the most magical. If father, let's not talk about you." At this moment, even I am beginning to suspect Big Brother Ren. He said that if you use the method of internal energy simulation that he taught you, you can use this vitality stone to activate the 5 elements Dian formation. All of this seems to have been arranged by Big Brother Ren. The method of internal energy simulation? Valley Master Nie asked, "What is that?" Nie Qianyu slapped her forehead and explained, "It is the method that Big Brother Ren taught you, how to refine elixirs." Isn't that so? Valley Master Nie was also surprised, "All of this, isn't it all about the treasure of our Rejuvenation Valley?" But Big Brother Ren really didn't know. Moreover, if he had any other intentions, he would have taken this brocade box away long ago. Why would he wait until he sent me home? Nie Qianyu explained anxiously. Valley Master Nie smiled, how am I suspecting Ren Xiaoyao? However, this is too much of a coincidence. Ren Xiaoyao's martial arts are powerful. If he forced himself, how could I retaliate? Even if you don't explain, I understand. Father, Nie Qianyu rebuked, since you know, don't say such things. It's fine if martial uncle said it, but you are not allowed to say it. Ha, I won't say it, I won't say it. As he spoke, Valley Master Nya opened the other brocade boxes one by one. Inside were 5 elements vitality stones of different colors. Alright, let's go. With these 5 elements vitality stones, if what Ren Xiaoxia said is true, our rejuvenation valley will be able to sit back and relax. Father, what kind of person is Big Brother Ren? How could he lie to me? Nie Qianyu was unhappy again. Alright, then hurry up and set up the array of the Rejuvenation Mountain Manor. Let Father see how the divine powers of the Beidou school are. Oh yes, shouldn't the disciples of the Jade Foundation Alliance familiarize themselves with this array? Otherwise, how can they enter the array and kill the enemy? As Valley Master Nye spoke, he restored everything and placed the jade pendant back into the brocade box, hiding it in his chest. The undercurrents in the pugilistic world were turbulent and the aroma sect was not peaceful either. Outside the Huansu, a 2-day journey, Nun Jingyi was sitting cross-legged on a small hill. There was no joy or anger on her face. Xia Qing and the rest, as well as the disciples of Ruijin Hall and Zhang Xiaohua, were standing around her respectfully. Sect leader. Xia Qing asked timidly, I wonder, if there are any changes in the core of the Huansu. Disciple. Disciples' martial arts are limited. I really can't get close to observe it. It's all right. Nun Jingyi said in a deep voice, not to mention you, even I can only observe from the left. I can't get close to the front. The lightning on the mountain is still the same. Although it feels a little different, it is probably caused by the changes in the Huansu array. That thing should be fine. When everyone heard this, they were relieved. Zhang Xiaohua curled her lips and thought to herself, that's right. That thing is so smart and can even hide in the void. I can't even catch it with my hands. How could there be a problem? That thing is fine, but what's the deal with the Huansu array? Xia Qing, tell me everything in detail. Nun Jingyi asked. Yes, sect leader. Xia Qing answered and recounted everything that happened to her and the rest. She even told Nun Jingyi about how she was rescued. However, she changed her thoughts to that of a visit. What? When she heard that Xia Qing was rescued, Nun Jingyi forced herself to remain calm. However, when she heard that there was a person from the immortal Tao flying in the air and, coming and going freely, she unconsciously stood up in shock and said in a trembling voice, Xia Qing, you, tell me in detail about that person's appearance. After listening to Xia Qing's description, Nun Jingyi was even more incredulous. She muttered, How? How could it be Senior Huan? How many years has it been? How could he? How could he still be in this world? Could it be that Senior Huan? He cultivated the great Tao. But he was seriously injured back then. It's impossible for him to survive. If he didn't die, then sect leader you of the incense cult, wouldn't have died? But how is this possible? Even the legendary peak of the immortal Tao can't survive for tens of thousands of years. Nun Jingyi was completely confused. Could it be that someone is impersonating Senior Huan? Nun Jingyi naturally guessed. Immediately, Nun Jingyi's face darkened. She released her divine sense and covered everyone present. Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. She carefully circulated the nameless incantation to suppress her divine sense and true qi. However, at this moment, Nun Jingyi asked coldly, Ren Xiaoyao, I heard from Xia Qing that you've entered the Huansu. Zhang Xiaohua's expression didn't change. She cupped her hands and said, "Yes." "Who allowed you to enter?" Nun Jingyi's divine sense circled around Zhang Xiaohua. Her tone was as cold as ever. You didn't say that I couldn't enter." Zhang Xiaohua had an innocent expression. She spread her hands and said, "This disciple only wanted to help Senior Martial Sister Xia in the Huan Su and repay sect leader's kindness. But before I could do anything, I was chased out by wild beasts." "Is that so?" Nun Jingyi chuckled. "You're a good schemer. But what's that in your arms?" Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. Chapter 938. Zhang Xiaohua was puzzled when he heard Nun Jingyi's question. "Things? Nothing. What is Sir Religious Leader talking about?" Nun Jingyi's divine sense didn't leave Zhang Xiaohua. She coldly said, "Then, take out the things in your bosom and let me see them." "Yes," Zhang Xiaohua obediently said. He then took out the things in his bosom. They were a short sword, a jade box, a token, some miscellaneous items, and a piece of silk. Nun Jingyi separated a strand of her divine sense and covered the jade box. She sneered and said, "Ren Xiaoyao, what's inside this jade box? Is this yours?" Zhang Xiaohua shook his head and said, "Sir Religious Leader, this jade box isn't mine. It was given to a female disciple called Jing Yi at Lingering Fragrance Peak by a person called Imo Qingshan." Shut up. How dare you mention Lord Sect Master's name?" Before Nun Jingyi could speak, Xia Qing berated her loudly. "Sir Religious Leader's name?" Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. He said with a trembling voice, "Sir Religious Leader is Jing Yi?" "Humph." When Nun Jingyi heard Imo Qingshan's name, she was clearly stunned. Zhang Xiaohua didn't hear any real anger in her snort. Zhang Xiaohua bowed and said, "Sir Religious Leader, please forgive this lowly one. This lowly one has only been spreading the incense cult for a short period of time. Normally, when I come early, I'm called by Sir Religious Leader. I don't know Sir Religious Leader's name. And ignorance is not a crime." Nun Jingyi waved her hand and said, "What's inside this jade box? Have you seen it?" Zhang Xiaohua said curiously, "Of course I've seen it. Otherwise, how would I know it's for Sir Religious Leader?" As he spoke, he handed over the blood letter. Nun Jingyi took the letter but didn't read it. She said, "Open the jade box." When Zhang Xiaohua opened it, Nun Jingyi asked, "Do you recognize this item?" Zhang Xiaohua shook her head. "I know it's called Chao Huandan, but I've never heard of it before." "Well, although you haven't heard of it, you must know that it's a rare item. Of course, something that Senior Imo risked his life to obtain is naturally a treasure." Zhang Xiaohua nodded. Then you don't have any thoughts of keeping it for yourself?" "Of course not." Zhang Xiaohua said righteously, "A gentleman's desire for wealth is justified. This is an item that contains Senior Mo's deep love. I only want to bring it back to Jing. Cult leader, how can I have other thoughts?" "He's lying." Xia Qing, who was at the side, actually said, "Sect Master, the day before yesterday outside the ruins of Huan, I asked him about the situation in the ruins of Huan. He didn't tell me anything at all. Senior Sister Xia, you've wrongly accused me." Zhang Xiaohua didn't understand why Xia Qing was making things difficult for her. She only explained, "At that time, I was about to report it, but Senior Sister was in a hurry to report it to Sect Master, so you stopped me. I didn't have any thoughts of hiding it from you." Then, "Ren Xiaoyao, why didn't you say anything when you saw me just now?" "Sect Master, you didn't seem to give me a chance to speak." Zhang Xiaohua said helplessly, "Actually, Sect Master, you're overthinking. If I wanted to keep it for myself, I could have just torn the blood letter. No one would know that it belonged to Senior Imo, don't you think so?" Well, that's true. Nun Jingyi's tone was obviously gentler. Ren Xiaoyao, take everything back. This jade box and the blood letter. I'll take them. You, tell me what happened inside, especially, how you met Mo. Qing Shan. Zhang Xiaohua put the things back into her chest and told her about her encounter with Mo Qing Shan again. Of course, this wasn't the truth. She only said that she saw Mo Qing Shan's corpse while walking around aimlessly. She just took the things and buried the corpse. Then she ran out when the formation shook. Was there anything else next to Mo Qing Shan's corpse? Nun Jingyi asked. Zhang Xiaohua shook her head like a rattledrum. No, there were only two things. Maybe there was something else, but I was a little panicked and didn't notice anything. Well, it's good that you were merciful enough to bury his corpse. It's just the location. Nun Jingyi was a little sad. I'm sorry to disappoint you, Sect Master. I was a little lost. The formation shook and everything became chaotic. Even if I wanted to find it, I couldn't. Sigh, don't look anymore. So what if you found it? So what if you didn't? Nun Jingyi whispered. She then stood up and looked at the ruins of Huanqiu in the distance. It wasn't clear if she was looking at Mo Qingshan's corpse or searching for that mysterious Wan Wuxin. After a while, she waved her hand and said, let's go back to Lingering Fragrance Peak first. It wasn't just one day. Everyone followed Nun Jingyi to Lingering Fragrance Peak. Zhang Xiaohua didn't know how others usually followed Nun Jingyi. She only knew that this time, everyone quietly rode their horses and followed Nun Jingyi silently. Nun Jingyi also rode a fine horse and led the way. She was about 10 feet away from everyone. She didn't look back or pay attention to the people behind her. Nun Jingyi had a veil over her face, and Zhang Xiaohua did not dare to release her divine sense. She could only look at the rather lonely figure in front of her, and she felt rather sentimental. Even though she was the master of a cult, and not only did she have an awe-inspiring reputation in incense cult, she was also famous in the entire world of martial artists, and there was no one who did not submit to her. She still had the emotions of a mortal in her heart. She might not be able to show them normally, but at some point in time, she would be touched by certain memories and certain things, and the tenderness in her heart would always be touched. Other things aside, when Nun Jingyi and Mo Qingshan went through the 3 tests of love together, Nun Jingyi was willing to jump off the cliff for Mo Qingshan. This kind of affection was as deep as the sea. How could she not leave a pure land for Mo Qingshan in her heart? Before today, perhaps the space of the pure land had already been sealed. However, in front of the Chao Huan pill that Mo Qingshan had risked his life to obtain, the sky that Nun Jingyi had forcefully supported collapsed with a loud rumble. The memories of the past, the feelings that were like the sea, had drowned her like a tide. Seeing that they had arrived at Lingering Fragrance Peak, Zhang Xiaohua saw the rough stone tablet by the mountain path. She couldn't help but be moved. This rough stone tablet was similar to the stone tablet that she had refined before. Could it be that she could use the same method to refine it? Of course, this thought only hovered in Zhang Xiaohua's mind for a moment before disappearing. If she wanted to do this, she had to find a moonless and windy night. The disciples of Ruijin Palace, who were guarding the mountain, did not behave the same way as when Zhang Xiaohua came. They came out of the protective formation from afar and stood by the mountain path to welcome Nun Jingyi. Nun Jingyi was expressionless. She rode her horse to the front of the mountain and raised her head to look at the towering Lingering Fragrance Peak. Then, she looked at the disciples of Ruijin Palace who were respectfully surrounding her. Soon after, she let out a long howl. This long howl was like metal and stone splitting the air. The sound shook the surroundings and startled countless celestial birds. Lord Sect Leader. The surrounding disciples were horrified. They covered their ears and fell to the ground as they cried out in alarm. Zhang Xiaohua's face was filled with surprise. She also bent over on the back of the odd beast and pretended to be attacked. However, her eyes were secretly looking through Huan's neck. Nun Jingyi's long howl lasted for half a cup of tea's time before she stopped. Then, she looked up to the sky and laughed. However, this laughter was filled with sorrow and relief. Then, she floated up and used her lightness skill to rush to the mountain path of Lingering Fragrance Peak. After a few leaps, she disappeared without a trace. Her laughter followed her to the top of Lingering Fragrance Peak. After a while, the people lying on the ground got up from the ground with a trace of pain on their faces. Who could say anything? After tidying up, the disciples of Rui Jin Palace were still patrolling. Xia Qing and the others calmed down and went up the stairs to Mo Xian Palace. Inside Mo Xian Palace, everything was the same. Nun Jingyi was still sitting at the top. Although she couldn't see her face and didn't know her mood, Zhang Xiaohua could still easily feel a kind of relaxation from the air in Mo Xian Palace. On both sides of Nun Jingyi were Nun Jingfan, Nun Xuezhen, Peacock, Chen Chen, Yu Yan, and a few others whom Zhang Xiaohua didn't know. They all had doubts on their faces and kept silent. Everyone stood still. Zhang Xiaohua was at the back. Xia Qing went forward and told everyone what happened in Huansu. Everyone was surprised and looked at Nun Jingyi. Nun Jingyi sighed and said, after hearing Xia Qing's report, I immediately rushed to the core of the ruins of Huanqiu. Although the great formation of the ruins of Huanqiu has collapsed and spiritual beasts are rampaging, the great formation at the core is still there and the heavenly thunder is still there. Nothing much has changed. That thing should still be there. Seeing that everyone was relieved, Nun Jingyi said again, but, the Immortal Path Senior who appeared in Huansu. According to Xia Qing's description, it should be Immortal Path Senior Huan, Senior Huan. Everyone who knew was shocked and shouted, how? How is this possible? That's right. Nun Jingyi was helpless as well. Everyone knows that Huan Su was renamed from cult leader Yu to Huan Su to commemorate Senior Huan. Since cult leader Yu thinks that Senior Huan has no physiology, then Senior Huan definitely won't be alive. Moreover, how many years has it been? How can there be someone who has lived for so many years in this world? Even if it's the immortal path, its lifespan is limited. Nun Jingfan frowned and said, I think so too. But if it's not Senior Huan, then, who could it be? Moreover, the cultivation of the immortal path is so high that it can fly. This is the cultivation of Senior Huan in the records. After pondering for a moment, Peacock said, fortunately, no matter what, this person is still the forearm of our fragrance sect. Although he can't show his real face, he saved Lily, Xia Qing, and the others. Moreover, he can control the mountain-shaking bear. This seems to be an unexpected power. Yes, the Yuhuandan pill in Lily's body is several times better than the Yuhuandan pill we're using now. If it wasn't for our fragrant sect's Immortal Path Senior, he wouldn't have been able to make it. Nun Jingyi added. Zhang Xiaohua stood in the hall and looked at Meng's figure. Unconsciously, she focused on listening to everyone's guesses about him. At this moment, a weak divine sense swept over. Then, a sword light shot towards Zhang Xiaohua. Chapter 939. When the divine sense swept past, Zhang Xiaohua became alert and focused his attention outside the hall. When the sword light rushed up, he pretended to be absent-minded and looked outside the hall. I-oh. Zhang Xiaohua pretended to panic and didn't care about etiquette. He took a step forward and fled into Mo Xian's palace. Although Zhang Xiaohua didn't release his divine sense and didn't have time to see who was attacking him, he thought that as long as he caught Nun Jingyi's attention, who would dare to be arrogant in Mo Xian's palace? Unexpectedly, things went beyond his expectations. He quickly moved forward and escaped the attack of the sword light. However, when the person who attacked saw Zhang Xiaohua dodging, he didn't give up and chased after Zhang Xiaohua. A sharp light followed behind Zhang Xiaohua. Sect leader, save me! Zhang Xiaohua shouted and wanted to use the ethereal steps. At this moment, Nun Jingyi exerted strength in her feet and floated into the air. With a few steps, she arrived beside Zhang Xiaohua. She stretched out her hand and caught the sword light behind Zhang Xiaohua with 2 fingers. She said coldly, Elder Jing Gang, what are you doing? Zhang Xiaohua hid behind Nun Jingyi. When she turned around, she saw Jing Gang floating down. Nun Jing Gang had a veil on her face, but the undulation of the veil made her look extremely angry. Oh no, could it be that something has been exposed? Zhang Xiaohua's heart thumped. However, he was no longer as nervous as when he first arrived at Lingering Fragrance Peak. He took a look and pretended to tremble. Jing. Nun Jing Gang. This lowly one. How did this lowly one offend you? You actually sneak attack me from behind? What Nun Jing Gang did just now was the shameless sneak attack from behind in the pugilistic world. Elder Jing Gang, do you have anything to say? Jing Yi said coldly. Mo Xian's palace is not a place to use weapons. Although you are the sect's grand elder, you still have to abide by the sect's rules. If you can't give a reason, don't blame me for being impartial. Jing Yi Shirtai kept calling Jing Gang Shirtai, elder, but never mentioned the title of senior sister, because she was angry. Sect leader is so impressive. Jing Gang didn't avoid it and sneered. 3 of my disciples were killed by this shameless brat. How can you make me calm? If I don't kill him, how can I face Ruchuan? Jing Yi Shirtai frowned and said in surprise, Elder Jing Gang, you can't talk nonsense. How could Ren Xiaoyao kill Yu Ruchuan? Moreover, the 2 of them have nothing to do with each other. There's no reason for them to have a dispute. If I can use my sword in Mo Xian's palace, I naturally have something to use against him. Otherwise, how can I dare to kill in front of sect leader? Jing Gang was furious and didn't put Jing Yi's prestige in her eyes. A trace of anger flashed in Nun Jing Yi's eyes. She looked at the long sword in her hand and scolded, put down the long sword. I'm here. Tell me the whole story. If Yu Zhuchuan was harmed by Ren Xiaoyao, I'll definitely redress her grievances. Nun Jing Gang pondered for a moment and loosened her grip. At the same time, Nun Jing Yi also loosened her grip and the long sword fell to the ground. Nun Jing Gang's arm moved slightly, wanting to grab the long sword. However, just as she moved her hand, she felt a chill. She subconsciously raised her head and saw Nun Jing Yi's murderous gaze. Jing Gang was startled. She heard the sound of the sword falling to the ground. Humph! Nun Jing Gang snorted and coldly looked at the panicking Zhang Xiaohua. She quickly walked over to Nun Jing Yi's chair and sat down. Jing Yi looked at Zhang Xiaohua and then at the surprised crowd in the hall. She asked softly, Ren Xiaoyao, do you know Yu Zhuchuan? Zhang Xiaohua nodded. Oh. Jing Yi was surprised. How did you know him? He is a disciple of Ruijin Hall. Even if you are an alchemy boy from distant Fire Hall, you shouldn't have met him. Zhang Xiaohua cupped her hands and told her everything about her encounter with Yu Zhuchuan. She even told her about Shi Mujuan's threat. Finally, she said, this disciple never saw Senior Yu again, you're lying. Jing Gang said sternly, you killed Zhuchuan when you were testing your martial arts in Emerald Valley. Emerald Valley? Testing martial arts? Zhang Xiaohua was surprised. She explained, Great Elder, what you said is strange. Emerald Valley is a place where disciples test their martial arts. Only this disciple entered that day. How could this disciple see Senior Yu? And even kill him? Chen Chen was already impatient. He frowned and said, that's right. Great Elder, your words are a little irrelevant. Jing Gang glared at Chen Chen and looked at Zhang Xiaohua. She said fiercely, Ren Xiaoyao, can you really pat your chest and swear that you were the only one in Emerald Valley? That you didn't see anyone else? Of course. Zhang Xiaohua did not hesitate at all. He patted his chest and said, Ren Xiaoyao, swear that I am the only one in Li Chui Valley, and I have not met a second person. If I speak a lie, may the heavens strike me with 5 bolts of lightning, and may I, Ren Xiaoyao, suffer the pain of being struck by lightning. Her words were powerful and her expression did not change at all. But Jing Gang still shook her head. It's just a few oaths. You can't take it seriously. Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly and asked Jing Yi, when this disciple entered Emerald Valley that day, I saw that the valley was different from what Zhang Pinger said. I wanted to go back and explain, but I was afraid that senior sister Mei Suying would find other problems for this disciple, so I went all the way. Fortunately, I was lucky and found a so-called ghost face mushroom in the innermost part of Emerald Valley. Although this disciple did not know its age, it was already in the innermost part and there was no more. So I braced myself and went back to report. But, without waiting for Jing Yi to speak, Jing Gang said loudly, but Mei Suying did see Zhuochuan enter Emerald Valley that day. Huh? Zhang Xiaohua was surprised again. She said loudly, I don't know. What did senior brother you do in Emerald Valley that day? Did Jing Gang need to say what Yu Zhuochuan did? Just now, Zhang Xiaohua had described the scene of her meeting with Yu Zhuochuan. Then there was Shi Mujuan's words. How could everyone not understand the possible relationship between Zhang Xiaohua, Zhang Pinger, and Yu Zhuochuan? How could they not know what Yu Zhuochuan was doing in Emerald Valley? Chen Chen glared fiercely at Zhang Xiaohua and said in a low voice, this kid doesn't look attractive. Why? Does he attract bees and butterflies? Although his voice was soft, everyone in the hall heard it clearly. Zhang Xiaohua's face reddened slightly. Jing Yi thought for a moment and said, tell Zhang Pinger from Distant Fire Palace to come to Mo Xian Palace. Then she said, Mei Suying, come in and talk. Yes. A timid voice came from outside the door. The one who came in was Mei Suying. She walked in and looked at the people in the hall. Her eyes flickered. Only when she saw Nun Jing Gang sitting on top did she feel relieved. After coming forward to greet her, Jing Yi said coldly, arranging for Ren Xiaoyao to test his martial arts in Emerald Valley and then having Yu Zhuochuan ambush him, was it you who planned this behind the scenes? Yes, this disciple. But before she finished speaking, Mei Suying immediately felt that something was wrong. She changed her words and said, this disciple didn't plan it alone. It was senior brother Yu who ordered this disciple to do it. Jing Gang moved her body but didn't say anything. Good. Tell me the whole story. The matter was very simple. Yu Zhuochuan saw that Zhang Xiaohua treated him coldly. Of course, he knew the crux of the matter. He found Mei Suying, who also harbored evil intentions towards Zhang Xiaohua. The timing was also coincidental. It was just in time for the fragrance cult's inheritance test. The person in charge of Zhang Xiaohua's martial arts test, eldest martial sister Han Zhuoqi, didn't have time. Thus, she gave this unnecessary test to Mei Suying. Therefore, the two of them worked together to design this unexpected martial arts test. They wanted to take Zhang Xiaohua's life in Ghost Valley. You saw with your own eyes that Yu Zhuochuan entered Emerald Valley after Ren Xiaoyao? Jing Yi asked coldly. Yes, this disciple saw it with her own eyes. Mei Suying looked at Jing Gang and answered. Then, what color was Yu Zhuochuan's clothes that day? Jing Yi asked. This. Mei Suying was somewhat hesitant. She whispered, senior martial brother Yu's qinggong is very strong. This disciple didn't see it clearly. It seemed to be cyan. Oh, no, it should be white, hee hee. Jing Yi sneered. What color was it? Cyan. Mei Suying gritted her teeth. At this moment, Jing Yi raised her head and said, "Let Zhang Pinger come in." "Who is the other female disciple?" Zhang Xiaohua raised her head and saw the indifferent Zhang Pinger and the nervous Shui Linglong come in side by side. Shui Linglong and Zhang Pinger bowed. This disciple was working beside Mo Xian Palace. When I heard Hierarch summon, I hurried over. May I know what Hierarch is here for? Zhang Pinger, tell this Hierarch. A month ago, when my Hierarch's protector disciple Ren Xiaoyao tested his martial arts in Emerald Valley, did he go in alone? Ren Xiaoyao. Emerald Valley tested his martial arts. Zhang Pinger frowned. Her face was slightly red. She looked at Shui Linglong and slightly tilted her head. When she saw Zhang Xiaohua, she couldn't help but get angry. However, she was still respectful. She said in a deep voice, "On that day, Senior Marshal Brother Ren went in alone." "You didn't see the second person?" "No." "You didn't see Yu Zhuqiuan go in?" "Senior Marshal Brother Yu." Zhang Pinger's face was red. She was even more surprised. However, she seemed to have realized something. She shook her head. "No, Hierarch. This disciple stayed at the entrance of Emerald Valley the whole day. I didn't see anyone other than Senior Marshal Brother Ren go in." "Oh, this is my Senior Marshal's sister Shui Linglong. She also accompanied me at the entrance of the valley that day. She can testify." "Yes, Hierarch. This disciple Shui Linglong was also at the entrance of Emerald Valley that day. I didn't see anyone go in." "That's strange. Lai Chui Valley is shrouded in ghost fog, so it's impossible to come down from above. You can only enter from the valley entrance. If you haven't seen it, how can it be said that Yu Zhuqiuan has entered the valley?" Chapter 940. Mei Suying, tell me the truth. Did you really see Yu Zhuqiuan enter the valley? Jing Yi yelled harshly. Mei Suying shuddered in fright. There seemed to be a kind of majesty in that rebuke. "Disciple, disciple." Mei Suying said with a sobbing tone, "Disciple, made an agreement with Senior Brother Yu." Disciple attracted Zhang Pinger and the others' attention so that Senior Brother Yu could enter the valley. "Disciple, disciple, really didn't see Senior Brother Yu enter the valley with my own eyes." "How dare you?" Jing Gang leaped up, "How dare you?" Another voice sounded, "Elder Jing Gang, this is Mo Xian Palace. You have repeatedly provoked our sect. Could it be that, you know that we won't punish you?" "You." Jing Gang gritted her teeth, "Sect leader, Yu Zhuqiuan is my direct disciple and also your martial nephew. You. Why do you keep siding with an outsider?" "Sect leader, please be merciful and let me hack this guy to death. Let's see if he still dares to talk back." "Shut up." Jing Yi yelled, "Elder Jing Gang, although Ren Xiaoyao is not a direct disciple of our fragrant cult, he is still a protector's disciple. If there is no real evidence, how can others be convinced if we kill him directly? Then just torture him. Our fragrant cult has many ways to extort confessions. I don't believe that he won't tell the truth." Nun Jing Yi shook her head slightly. "Eldest senior sister, I understand your feelings, but teaching is like running a country. You can't just do whatever you want. We can't torture a disciple just based on a few baseless words. Moreover, although Ren Xiaoyao's martial arts are high, he is still far from being Yu Zhuqiuan's opponent. Senior sister's deduction is based on Yu Zhuqiuan entering the valley. But what if Yu Zhuqiuan didn't enter the valley? Oh right, did senior sister find anything in Li Chui Valley?" Jing Gang shook her head. "After receiving Mei Suying's report, I personally went to take a look. As expected, the ghost fog in Li Chui Valley was mostly gone. I didn't find anything strange. Did you search carefully? Yes, I did. I sent dozens of Rui Jin Palace disciples to search the entire Lichui Valley. There was no trace. Senior sister, that's right. If it is as you said, just relying on your God, it's impossible not to find any clues. You didn't see it and the disciples didn't find it. How could it be related to Ren Xiaoyao? But Sect Master, Zhuo Kun was fine at Lingxiang Peak, but Ren Xiaoyao came and disappeared. How can I not be suspicious? Nun Jingyi sighed and looked at the silent Zhang Xiaohua. She nodded slightly and said, the aroma sect has been quiet for many years. Now, it's like a stagnant water with no ripples. Not to mention the immortal Dao Senior in Huansu, even the Dragon Sect, the Righteous Dao Alliance, and that mysterious sect have planted spies in our sect. This time, when Xia Qing and the others returned from Huansu, they were attacked by the enemy. That day, Xia Qing and the others were seriously injured. If not for my timely arrival, I'm afraid they would have died in the enemy's hands. If that's the case, when the enemy destroys these people like the dead disciples, where will we find them? Don't tell me you're going to find a disciple and torture him. It's a bit chaotic now. The disciples of Spreading Fragrance sect should work together to maintain order in the sect, not fight and scheme against each other. Mei Suying, you conspired with Yu Zhuochuan to plot against the disciples of our sect. You have violated the third rule of the sect. Fortunately, it was only a plan and not implemented. I'll warn you once. Go back to the hall and receive your punishment. I won't pursue the other matters. Thank you, Sect Master. Mei Suying didn't dare to say anything. She was already very lucky that Jing Yi didn't delve into her relationship with Yu Zhuochuan. Moreover, from Jing Yi's words, the punishment wasn't too severe. How could she not thank her? Jing Gang sat on the chair and watched as Jing Yi dismissed everyone. She was furious. Although she wasn't certain, she had a faint feeling that Zhang Xiaohua was the one who killed Yu Zhuochuan ever since Mei Suying went to Rui Jin Palace and reported to her. However, she didn't know why Jing Yi was so partial to Zhang Xiaohua and didn't even torture her. It really puzzled her. However, she didn't plan to let Zhang Xiaohua go. When Jing Yi waved her hand to dismiss Xia Qing and the others, Jing Gang rolled her eyes and said, Sect Master, there are dangers everywhere in the sect. All the disciples under us are busy and it's hard to find suitable disciples. Moreover, they are familiar with the entire sect and it's difficult to investigate them. Ren Xiaoyao is a newcomer and no one knows him. In my opinion, it's suitable for him to investigate the spies in the sect. This. Jing Yi frowned and stared at Jing Gang for a while. She said, Ren Xiaoyao was injured in Huansu, we can't let him go down the mountain immediately. It won't be too late to let him go after he recovers, right? Jing Gang smiled. Moreover, Ren Xiaoyao is the guardian disciple of our fragrance sect. If we don't do something, I'm afraid, many disciples won't be convinced. Yes, what senior sister said makes sense. Nun Jing-yi thought for a moment and decided to give Nun Jing Gang a way out. She nodded and said, Ren Xiaoyao, rest for a few days on Lingxiang Peak and heal your injuries. Then, go down the mountain and have a look. This time, you were almost attacked by the enemy. If you can find one or two among the many disciples, it can be considered as revenge. Zhang Xiaohua bowed and said, I'll follow Sect Master's orders. After I see Zixia, I'll pack up and prepare to go down the mountain. Junior brother Ren has a good plan. If junior sister Zixia knows, she'll be happy. Peacock, who had been listening carefully, said, Unfortunately, when junior brother went down the mountain last time, junior sister Zixia went into closed-door training and hasn't come out yet. I'm afraid she'll disappoint junior brother. Meng is in closed-door training. Zhang Xiaohua was a little regretful and happy. He asked, I don't know, at this time, Chen Chen waved his hand and said, "We don't know much about it. We only know that junior sister Zixia is in closed-door training and her time is uncertain. I'm afraid you won't be able to see her before you go down the mountain." Zhang Xiaohua touched his nose and said, "Then I'll take my leave." Meng. I hope senior sisters will take care of her. He, Chen Chen laughed, "Zixia isn't just yours. She's also our junior sister. Don't worry and go." Zhang Xiaohua bowed and left Emo Xian Palace. He didn't have any injuries and had healed himself along the way. Why would he need to treat his injuries? However, Zhang Xiaohua was still in the house outside Emo Xian Palace. He closed the door for 3 days and 3 nights. He was thinking along the way, combining the sword playing the world in his mind and the human figure in the stone tablet, and carefully comprehending the sword controlling technique. 3 days later, in the morning, the door opened and Zhang Xiaohua's tall and thin figure walked out of the house. At this time, there was only confidence in his eyes. It was as if the world was in his hands. Looking at the quiet surroundings, Zhang Xiaohua smiled and released his divine sense. The range of his divine sense wasn't large, only 100 feet. Immediately, he understood the situation around him. Zhang Xiaohua suddenly frowned. About 70 to 80 feet away, there was a hidden place. There was a disciple of Ruijin Palace hiding there and secretly looking in his direction. Zhang Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Then, he pretended that he didn't know and took a stroll by the side of the house. Since Zhang Xiaohua came to Emo Xian Palace, he had been very careful and didn't release his divine sense. Now that he had something to rely on, he found something interesting. The range of 10 feet wasn't big, but it wasn't small either. Not long after, many disciples had passed by. Zhang Xiaohua didn't do it intentionally, but he found that there were fluctuations of heaven and earth yuan qi on most of the disciples. Why is that? Zhang Xiaohua was surprised, but after a while, he understood that the fragrant religion was a great religion left behind by the immortal Tao for 10,000 years. Moreover, it was under the protection of the array. Although the loss of yuan qi was great, there was still some of it left behind in the fragrant religion. Moreover, there were many artifacts of the immortal Tao, no matter if they were broken, scattered, or useless. Although these scattered artifacts were useless, it couldn't stop the disciples from liking them. Therefore, some of them carried the useless jade pendants on their bodies, and some of them inlaid the fragments of the artifacts on their swords. The fluctuation of yuan qi came from these useless fragments. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Compared to them, he was really poor. Just as he was thinking, a disciple caught sight of him from afar and quickly fled. "Io, what's the reason for this?" Zhang Xiaohua almost wanted to touch his nose. Needless to say, the disciples of the Ruijin Palace must have been sent by Jing Gang. Why did the disciple who just left? Not long after, the disciple returned with something wrapped in yellow silk in his hand. When he saw Zhang Xiaohua, he said in a deep voice, "Are you Ren Xiaoyao's junior brother Ren?" Zhang Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He cupped his hands and said, "That's me." "May I know why senior sister is looking for me?" The disciple handed over the thing in his hand and said with a smile, "I am under the order of the hierarch to bestow this internal strength mental cultivation method to you." Internal strength mental cultivation method? Zhang Xiaohua didn't care about it in his heart, but his face was full of joy. He received it with both hands and said, "Thank you for the hierarch's gift." Yes, the hierarch said that Ren Xiaoyao is our sect's protector disciple. Although his internal strength isn't his forte, he can't be too vulgar. This internal strength mental cultivation method is practiced by the disciples of the Monan Palace of the Incense Cult. He needs to exhaust himself and work hard to cultivate it. Don't disappoint the hierarch. Thank you for the hierarch's kindness. Zhang Xiaohua bowed. He knew that this was his reward for bringing back Mo Qingshan's relics, so he accepted it with a clear conscience. Chapter 941. Also, Lord Cult Leader said that if there is nothing wrong with your injuries, you should go down the mountain as soon as possible. You have to be more careful along the way. Yes, Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile, I will pack up and prepare to go out. Senior Martial Sister, please report back to Lord Cult Leader. This disciple will definitely find out what happened. And I will report it as it is. The disciple nodded and turned to leave. After that, Zhang Xiaohua packed up a little and also rode down the mountain on the David's deer. Only the disciple of Ruijin Palace followed her for a while and disappeared. After leaving lingering fragrance peak, Zhang Xiaohua became bolder. She released her divine sense and saw that the disciple of Ruijin Palace who was following her disappeared. She couldn't help but sneer in her heart. Nun Jing-yi was the cult leader of Ruijin cult. Her martial arts cultivation was definitely something that Zhang Xiaohua couldn't catch up with even if she rode the David's deer. As for the Immortal Path's magical powers that she had inherited, it was estimated that many of them were also things that Zhang Xiaohua couldn't reach. However, if she were to encounter Nun Jing-yi, Zhang Xiaohua only had two magical powers to protect herself. One was the Transfiguration Technique, and the other was the Imperial Wind Technique. Both of these were worse than Nun Jing-yi's, not to mention Nun Jing-gang, whose divine sense was much weaker than Nun Jing-yi's. In addition, Zhang Xiaohua had just comprehended the true Imperial Sword Technique. Zhang Xiaohua really didn't put Nun Jing-gang in her eyes. Of course, Nun Jing-gang was the successor of Ruijin cult and had been immersed in the Immortal Path's cultivation for many years. There was always something that Zhang Xiaohua didn't expect. If Nun Jing-gang didn't force her, Zhang Xiaohua would definitely not go against her. After riding on Huanhuan for half a day, Zhang Xiaohua gradually felt impatient. Although Huanhuan's leg strength was good, it was still lacking compared to the Imperial Wind Technique. Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment and found a place with lush trees to throw Huanhuan down. She also found a low-lying place to hide the Great Wisdom Heavy Sword. Then, she used the Transfiguration Technique and a handsome man with a moderate figure appeared. He laughed a few times and with a wave of his sleeves, he flew into the air and disappeared without a trace. An hour after Zhang Xiaohua disappeared, on a mountain path not far away, a gray figure appeared. This person was wearing gray close-fitting clothes and her entire head was covered. Her face couldn't be seen. Only the curves of her body could be recognized as a woman. The woman jumped onto a tree and looked up at the winding mountain path. She muttered to herself, this is clearly the path. Why can't I see any trace of him? Then, she laughed and said, hee, could it be that he knows? Did he go in the opposite direction? Then he turned around and went somewhere else. I want to see where he can go in the 19 mountains of Ruijin cult. As she spoke, the woman turned around and headed in another direction. When the woman had just left, about 500 feet away, on a protruding hill, a weak light flashed. Following which, a handsome man appeared on the hill. Looking at the woman's gradually disappearing figure, he frowned and said, Who is this woman? Is she chasing me? But then, he laughed and said, how could she be chasing me? Maybe she's chasing that unlucky guy called Ren Xiaoyao. After that, he rubbed his nose and did the same thing as Zhang Xiaohua. Then, he jumped and went in another direction. Wasn't this handsome man Zhang Xiaohua had disguised as, the so-called Panan? After Zhang Xiaohua found her direction, she disguised herself and traveled with the wind. She traveled for more than half a day. In this half a day, Zhang Xiaohua rode the wind and performed the flying technique that she had just learned. The flying technique was the best technique in the Misty School. If one's cultivation had not reached a certain level, they would not be able to perform it. However, Zhang Xiaohua was indeed talented in the flying technique. She had comprehended it earlier, but her vital energy was limited and her cultivation was shallow. Thus, she could not practice it well. This time, she had gained some benefits in the ruins of Huanshu and started to practice the flying technique. She was just at the beginning, so it was the right time. Yes, it's here. Zhang Xiaohua, who was flying unsteadily in the air, saw a cliff and landed. It was the place where Xia Qing and the others were attacked a few days ago. Just when Zhang Xiaohua wanted to soar up again and take out the things he had buried according to his memory, his heart suddenly moved. He was actually vigilant. It seemed that there was some movement in the stone tablet he had refined. Oh no! Could it be that someone has discovered it? Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. She immediately went underground and went straight to the place where she sensed the danger. As she walked, Zhang Xiaohua was surprised. This place is so remote that I can't even see a single disciple. Only the disciples of the Ruijin Palace who are guarding the ruins of Huanqiu may pass by. I just buried the things, how could someone discover it? When did my character become so bad? When Zhang Xiaohua was a little closer, she released her divine sense. Sure enough, at the place where Zhang Xiaohua buried the money bag, there was a person in a black robe. This person was tall and his whole head was covered by the cloak of the robe. Before Zhang Xiaohua could scan with her divine sense to see the face under the cloak, she saw the person move. He seemed to have sensed something. He suddenly turned around and looked around. It was an old man with white hair, a white face, and slender eyes. The old man looked around with extreme vigilance. Then, he used his qing gong to come to a high ground. Seeing that there was no one else, he muttered something. His fingers moved slightly a few times, and he returned to the place where he stood just now. This old man can actually discover my divine sense. But why is he just standing there? If he wants to take out the things that I placed in the restriction, wouldn't he have to dig up the mountain rocks? As she thought about it, Zhang Xiaohua immersed her divine sense into the mountain rocks and looked at the restriction. It didn't matter as the restriction and things were still there. However, outside the restriction, there were actually many pitch-black insects. These insects were extremely small and black, just like a black fog. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but frown. This seems to have seen it somewhere before. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua was alarmed. She turned around slightly and saw a wisp of black fog approaching her from less than 3 feet above her right hand. Ouch! Zhang Xiaohua didn't have time to think. He quickly formed a hand seal and dove into the ground. At the same time, an old voice coldly rang out, "Where did this thief come from? How dare you peep at me?" Then, the cold voice revealed a hint of astonishment. Obviously, he knew that Zhang Xiaohua had escaped underground. Zhang Xiaohua had escaped underground and wanted to heave a sigh of relief. However, when her divine sense swept behind her, she realized that the wisp of black fog had followed her. Since the black fog formed by the black insects could discover the restriction underground, of course, it could also chase after Zhang Xiaohua. Moreover, the insects flew very quickly and Zhang Xiaohua couldn't get rid of them while she was in the earth escape technique. After pondering for a while, Zhang Xiaohua formed a seal and headed towards the restriction. That old man could obviously see Zhang Xiaohua's movement through the black insects. He was slightly taken aback. Then, his lips moved slightly and a chanting sound was heard. At the same time, his fingers moved again. In an instant, a portion of the black insects that were hiding on the restriction secretly came out from the front. The old man had a good idea. He wanted to attack from the front and back, but his divine sense didn't seem strong enough. Perhaps he could only rely on the black insects to determine Zhang Xiaohua's movement. How could he be as agile as Zhang Xiaohua? Zhang Xiaohua made a few turns and left the black insects behind her. Then, she found an opening and quickly swept past the restriction. When she got closer, she saw the black insect that was hiding on the restriction. It was smaller than a flea. One of its antennae was bent and pressed against the restriction. The 2 transparent wings on its back were flapping slightly. On the antennae, there was an even more subtle fluctuation. With this flickering, the restriction was corroded bit by bit. After seeing the appearance of the black insect, Zhang Xiaohua immediately realized that this was the mysterious black insect that she had extracted from Oyan's Mudpill Palace on Shixin Peak. Could it be that this old man is the consecrator of Lingxiang Peak who had a conflict with Nun Jingyi? Zhang Xiaohua thought to herself, and her actions weren't slow. She pinched an incantation gesture and hit the original restriction. That restriction shone brightly and shook the black insect a foot away. Zhang Xiaohua took advantage of this gap and reached out her hand to take out the money pouch, belt, bracelet and other items from the restriction. Following that, she kept them into her bosom. Only then did she put down the stone in her heart. With a sharp whistle, she dashed out of the ground. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua rush out of the ground with a whoosh and float in the air, the already surprised old man's face became even more solemn. He stretched out his hand to reach for a weapon at his waist. However, just as his hand touched the weapon, he paused and immediately pulled out a small, sparkling and translucent jade rui from his bosom. Holding the jade rui in his hand, the old man then raised his head and asked in a deep voice, "This, young friend, this thing underground was discovered by me. Why did you snatch it? You discovered it?" Zhang Xiaohua saw that the old man wasn't afraid of her using the earth escape technique and the wind controlling technique and even questioned her. She couldn't help but become vigilant. Using her divine sense, she saw that those black insects had drilled out of the ground and were gathering in the air above the old man's head. They were black and faint and didn't move forward to attack. Furthermore, there weren't any black insects around her. She then opened her mouth and said, "These things were discovered by you, but you forgot that these things were buried by I." The old man was shocked and blurted out, "Where did you come from, Taoist priest?" Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said with a smile, "You don't need to know where I come from. You only need to know that the things you discovered are mine. I'm going to take them away now." Hee hee. The old man rolled his eyes and shook his head, "You're mistaken, Taoist priest. You obviously came after me. If these things belong to Taoist priest, why would Taoist priest bury them here? With Taoist priest's magical powers, there shouldn't be many people who can do anything to these things, right?" Chapter 942. The old man's question was reasonable, and Zhang Xiaohua was at a loss for words. However, the reason could not be revealed to outsiders. Zhang Xiaohua laughed. "You old man, you're really unreasonable. If I said that this thing belongs to I, then it belongs to I. Why do you need a reason?" "That's right, Taoist priest is a person of the immortal Tao. Your powers are vast, and you're not someone I can compare to. However, everything under the heavens cannot be reasoned with. If Taoist priest can't produce any convincing evidence, then the old man did not say any threatening words, but the jade rui in his hand tightened. Zhang Xiaohua scanned it with her divine sense. The jade rui was also very lively. It should be an immortal Tao artifact, but she did not know what use it had. After thinking for a while, Zhang Xiaohua smiled. "That's easy. Of course, I can give you a reason. However, you have to tell who are you?" The old man was stunned. After thinking for a while, he said, "Since Taoist priest is asking, how can I not tell you?" "All right." When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she reached out and took out Chasing Dream. She did not form any seals, but threw it into the air. Then, she used her divine sense to control Chasing Dream according to the Sword of the World technique. Chasing Dream floated in the air. At first, it did not move. Then, it suddenly emitted a weak light. That light flashed and then extinguished. Chasing Dream suddenly moved. Like lightning, it shot towards the old man. Ah! The old man was looking at Zhang Xiaohua. When he saw her throw the small sword, he was already on guard. When he saw the small sword flying towards him, he was even more shocked. The fingers on his left hand moved nimbly as he chanted something. His right hand raised the jade rui. A ball of light green light slowly flowed out from the jade rui. However, before the light could shine, Chasing Dream had already shot in front of the old man. Chasing Dream was like lightning. When it arrived in front of the old man, it jumped back and retreated rapidly. It only stopped when it was 10 feet away. Then, it jumped up and down in the air. Whoosh! Only at this moment did the brilliance of the jade scepter open. It was like a wall that blocked the old man's body. Zhang Xiaohua could not help but smile when she saw that the imperial sword technique was indeed extraordinary. It was only her first time trying it out, but the speed of the Chasing Dream was several times faster than when she did not know the trick to controlling it in the past. Following that, the Chasing Dream trembled again and the brilliance reappeared. At this moment, two identical Chasing Dreams appeared out of thin air, one in front and one behind. They were just as fast as before. With two consecutive bangs, the light screen formed by the jade rui swayed and the old man's figure swayed along with it. The two Chasing Dreams intertwined and swooped down again. The old man's expression changed greatly. His left hand did not dare to be negligent. His fingers moved again as he chanted. Half of the black cloud above his head flew down and the other half attacked Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua did not have any expression on her face. She reached into her bosom and took out a fire talisman. She threw it out. With a peng sound, the talisman exploded around the black bugs. Sparks rained down and covered the black bugs that were attacking them. However, when the fire dissipated, the black bugs were still flying in the air. Not many of them were burned to death by the fire. Io, could it be that these black bugs can only be destroyed by the delirium eye or little black? When Zhang Xiaohua saw this, her expression changed. Of course, little black was not by her side and the delirium eye did not have any movement. After thinking for a while, Zhang Xiaohua made a hand seal. Zhu Meng immediately turned around and rushed towards the black bugs. However, there were too many black bugs. Although Zhu Meng knocked a few of them to the ground, it was like a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. Most of the black bugs ignored it and swarmed over. Zhang Xiaohua retreated a little when he saw the black worms approaching. He extended his hand and took out the beast head paperweight. This thing had mysteriously subdued the fire crows in the ruins of Huan. Perhaps it would be useful. As expected, the moment the beast head paperweight appeared, the black worms instinctively paused. However, under the command of the old man, they flew over again. However, their flying formation was no longer stable. Zhang Xiaohua frowned. Just like in the ruins of Huan, she channeled her vital energy into the beast head paperweight. However, this time, it was different from the ruins of Huan. The beast head paperweight did not suck in all the black bugs like it did in the past. Of course, it was not to no avail. As Zhang Xiaohua channeled her vital energy, the black bugs seemed to feel afraid. They did not charge forward but circled around a few feet in front of Zhang Xiaohua, rolling left and right. The old man was also stunned. He waved his left hand and hurried sounds came from his mouth. He seemed to be urging the black bugs, but the black bugs escaped his control and stopped. Unknowingly, the two of them were in a stalemate, or rather, they were both feeling awkward and helpless. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua's eyes turned. She waved her hand and Zhu Meng split into two and flew back into Zhang Xiaohua's hand. Then, Zhang Xiaohua flew back a few feet and laughed. How is it? Can this prove that this item belongs to I? When the old man heard this, he was stunned at first. Then, he revealed an unconcealable joy. Although he did not dare to loosen his grip on the jade rui in his right hand, his left hand did what Zhang Xiaohua did. With a wave of his hand, the bugs that had turned into black fog flew back. When they reached the old man's side, they entrenched themselves on top of his head. Taoist priest, you are indeed skilled in the art of sword manipulation. I can't compare to you. Needless to say, just based on the fact that Taoist priest can control the flying sword inside, I know that this item must have been left behind by you. The old man said with a smile. He did not bother to distinguish whether the flying sword was taken out from the ground or not. Since we have identified the item, you can tell I. Who are you? Zhang Xiaohua narrowed her eyes and asked from afar. She did not move forward. She thought that the old man would beat around the bush. Who knew that the old man said loudly, I am Lei Hong from the Greenwood Palace. May I know who Taoist priest is? Then, he asked with a strange tone, could it be the spring equinox or hibernation awakening? Zhang Xiaohua frowned and pretended not to know. She said, what spring equinox or hibernation awakening? I am Panan. Panan. When Lei Hong heard this, he pondered for a moment as if he was thinking about something. Then, he asked, Senior Pan, forgive me for being slow-witted. Senior's cultivation method was not passed down by the fragrant religion. Moreover, your supernatural powers are obviously superior to the fragrant religion's Nanjing Yi. May I know? Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and sneered. How can you know I's origin? I just don't know why you are around the Huan Su if you are from the Greenwood Palace. Lei Hong also smiled and said, of course, I am here on the orders of the sect leader. I am here on official business. Zhang Xiaohua did not believe that this guy could go against Nanjing Yi and attack O Yen. Of course, he was not a good person. Maybe it was related to the sneak attack a few days ago. After thinking for a while, Zhang Xiaohua put away the beast head paperweight. She cupped her hands and said, in that case, you can continue with your business. I will leave first. After that, she made a gesture and used the art of riding wind. She went straight in one direction and disappeared in a moment. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua suddenly leave, Lei Hong did not dare to move. He still held the jade scepter and stood there quietly. After waiting for the time it took to brew a cup of tea, he commanded the black bug to circle around for a long time. He even checked the ground. After confirming that there was no trace of Zhang Xiaohua, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and muttered to himself in shock, where did this immortal senior come from? He looks quite young. How can he be so powerful? Maybe, he is not a hibernation awakening. This power. I am afraid that he is close to the few heavenly kings in the sect. Then, Lei Hong shook his head slightly. Fortunately, this senior is not from the incense cult. Otherwise, it would be difficult. However, even if it is difficult, what can he do? He has not returned to the Tenryu sect for a long time. I am afraid that the heavenly kings have trained many experts. It's a good thing that he doesn't have a way to restrain this soul puppet of mine. Otherwise, this old life of mine would have to die here today. This is a big piece of news. Let's wait for the incense cult's restriction to be lifted and send the news out quickly. Don't delay the sect leader's plan. As he spoke, Lei Hong took out a coarse black bottle from his bosom and kept the black soul puppet. Just as he was about to keep the bottle, he stopped and released a small soul puppet. Then, he held the jade scepter in his hand and used his qing gong to fly in another direction. After Lei Hong and Zhang Xiaohua left, there was only a gentle breeze blowing in this unremarkable place. No one knew what had happened here. 10 days later, on a mountain peak that reached the clouds, there was a sudden movement among the lush greenery. Between two trees, a ball of faint light flashed and a tall and thin man emerged from the ground. It was Zhang Xiaohua. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua had a smile on his face as he looked at the beautiful scenery on the mountain peak. He smiled and said, as expected, there is also an 8 trigrams purple gold furnace on Kuang Lu Peak. I have already gathered 17 alchemy furnaces. Only Jiuhua Peak has not been visited. I am curious, what is the use of these 18 alchemy furnaces? Ever since Zhang Xiaohua obtained the belt and other items that were hidden underground and failed to win the battle with Lei Hong, he went to the 19 peaks of the incense cult. Kuanglu Peak was the second to last one. As Zhang Xiaohua expected, there was a hidden alchemy room at the peak of each peak. There was an identical 8 trigrams purple gold furnace inside. However, when he saw the 17 identical alchemy furnaces in the belt, Zhang Xiaohua was even more suspicious. No matter how bored the seniors of the incense cult were, they would never place an alchemy furnace on each peak. Moreover, they were identical. What was the purpose of these alchemy furnaces? The 17 pill furnaces in the belt were placed together, and there was a faint connection between them. However, if one looked carefully, there was no trace of it. After sitting in the forest for a long time, Zhang Xiaohua didn't want to go directly to Jiuhua Peak. For the past 10 days or so, he had concealed himself and practiced his flying technique while walking in the aroma cult. He also felt that it was quite tiring. Now that he had arrived at Kuanglu Peak, which was right next to Jinghai Lake, he couldn't help but have the thought of going to take a look. Chapter 943. Jinghai Lake was the place where Zhang Xiaohua first entered the fragrant religion. It was quite a large lake, and it was also the place where people entered and exited the fragrant religion. Zhang Xiaohua's immortal cultivation had greatly improved, and her divine sense was also a lot stronger. Therefore, she also had the intention to explore Jinghai Lake. Forming a seal with her hand, Zhang Xiaohua's body flew up and broke through the sky. Her figure gradually dimmed, indicating that her flying technique and concealment technique had greatly improved. The flying technique was indeed powerful. Although Zhang Xiaohua had just entered the sect, it only took her the time to drink a cup of tea to arrive at Jinghai Lake. From afar, Zhang Xiaohua released her divine sense. She only felt that the fluctuation of heaven and earth's origin energy above the lake was very strong. Especially above the lake, there were several fluctuations that swept across, and it was very chaotic. Zhang Xiaohua frowned and temporarily dispelled the idea of exploring the lake. She formed a seal and landed in the forest beside the lake. The forest was lush with branches and leaves, and the wind blew the leaves, creating a rustling sound. After Zhang Xiaohua landed, she did not use her qing gong. Instead, she walked step by step in the shade of the trees. The mottled sunlight penetrated through the forest, and it was particularly dazzling. Her feet stepped on the 1-foot thick underbrush, and the rustling sound made Zhang Xiaohua recall many things. This was the place where Zhang Xiaohua first met the outstanding disciple of the Dan Repository Hall, Lu Lihong. It was also in the morning that Zhang Xiaohua saw the sanctimonious side of Lu Lihong. The dragon scale fruit that she obtained was also taken away by Lu Lihong. However, the things that happened after that were even more unimaginable. She met Lu Lihong again, fought with him, and was ambushed and killed by him. All of this happened in the span of a few months. At this moment, she was revisiting old memories. Where was the expert who deceived her in the past? He had already turned into a handful of soil in the Yulon Grand Canyon. Thinking about this, Zhang Xiaohua used her divine sense to check. In just a moment, she saw a lot of precious herbs in the forest. However, at this moment, Zhang Xiaohua disdained to pick them. Although the herbs in the Yulon Grand Canyon were refined in the Shixin Peak, the remaining herbs were enough for Zhang Xiaohua to use. Although the herbs in the forest were good, they were far from what Zhang Xiaohua had, so naturally, it did not attract her interest. Just when Zhang Xiaohua casually glanced around, suddenly, an obscure fluctuation appeared, and in the blink of an eye, it disappeared again. Zhang Xiaohua was surprised. He focused his divine sense on the place just now, but there was no more movement. Could it be that I saw wrongly? Zhang Xiaohua thought with a frown. However, he still changed his direction and went to the place where the fluctuation came from. When he got closer, he found that the place where the fluctuation appeared was out of the forest, right next to the Jinghai Lake. Looking carefully, Zhang Xiaohua was surprised to find that it was the place where she and Chang Chang had set up camp. Could it be that there is something fishy underground? Zhang Xiaohua thought, and the obscure fluctuation suddenly appeared again. Just like before, it disappeared in a moment. Of course, this time, Zhang Xiaohua saw it clearly with her divine sense. It was a small bead under the ground not far away. Zhang Xiaohua used her divine sense to check the surroundings of the bead. After confirming that there was no danger, she walked over. The bead was not buried deep, and Zhang Xiaohua easily took it out. Looking at the gray bead in her hand, Zhang Xiaohua concentrated her divine sense and wanted to delve into it. However, the bead seemed to have a strange restriction. It did not isolate her divine sense, but when she tried to force her divine sense into it, the restriction shook violently, and a chaotic aura came out from within the bead. Suddenly, a sense of danger rose in Zhang Xiaohua's heart. Her expression changed, and with a flick of her wrist, she immediately threw the gray bead towards the Jinghai Lake. The bead shot out like an arrow from a bow. Even so, when the bead flew to the surface of the lake, the restriction on the surface of the lake was triggered. Before the restriction could activate, there was a weak flash of light, followed by a loud bang. The bead actually exploded on the surface of the lake, and the explosion caused huge waves to rise from the bottom of the lake. What is this? Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. If the bead exploded in her hand, wouldn't she lose her life? No matter how light it was, she reckoned that she would not be able to keep her arm. Is this something that was forcefully buried? Or was it buried by someone else? Zhang Xiaohua was about to ponder, but there was another movement, and a weak divine sense swept over. Zhang Xiaohua's expression changed slightly, and a fierce look flashed in her eyes. She seemed to have an idea. She pinched a spell, and first, she escaped into the ground. After a short while, a few disciples wearing the uniform of the Wuming Hall hurriedly rushed over. Before they arrived, they saw a woman wearing tight clothes. Her head was wrapped tightly, and she was using her qing gong to stand high above the bushes. After the explosion, the surface of the lake returned to normal. However, the restriction on the surface of the lake was even more chaotic. How could these low-level disciples of the Wuming Hall know about this? They checked for a long time, but they did not find anything, so they had to go elsewhere. When these disciples went far away, the woman hiding in the bushes revealed herself. Her exposed eyes stared at the surface of the lake for a long time, as if she was thinking about something. At this time, the sound of leaves swaying could be heard from not far away. The woman raised her eyebrows, stood up, and looked for the source. Ren Xiaoyao. Before the woman could get close, she saw Zhang Xiaohua's exposed back. She blurted out, "You are indeed cunning. I have been chasing you for a long time, but I could not find any trace of you. If I did not have a sudden impulse to come to the Jinghai Lake to take a look, who would know that you were hiding here?" Zhang Xiaohua heard the sound behind her, and she pretended to be afraid. She used her qing gong, ethereal steps, and went into the depths of the forest. Ethereal steps? The woman seemed to be very familiar with ethereal steps. When Zhang Xiaohua used it, she saw through it. "I knew that there was something wrong with you. I did not expect your problem to be so big." Zhang Xiaohua did not look back. She controlled her speed, sometimes fast and sometimes slow, so that the woman behind her could not catch up. After the time it took to smoke a cigarette, the two of them went into the depths of the forest. The woman was so angry that she forgot to consider why she could not catch up to Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua continued to run forward until she found a spacious area. Zhang Xiaohua stood under a tree with her arms crossed. She turned around and said with a smile, "Great Elder Jing Gang, why are you chasing me?" When the woman heard this, she unconsciously stopped and changed her voice. She asked curiously, how did you know it was me?" As she spoke, she removed the cloth that was wrapped around her head, revealing her white hair and wrinkled face. "Ha ha ha." Zhang Xiaohua laughed. "In the entire fragrant cult, you are the only one who can't get along with me. Other than you, who else would care about a small character like me? It's that simple." Jing Gang was stunned and asked in disbelief. "Of course, other than this, what else could it be? You changed your voice and clothes, but you didn't even let me see your face. If I didn't guess, how would I know?" Jing Gang slowly nodded and sneered. "Since you know it's me, you don't seem to be afraid. Why should I be afraid?" Zhang Xiaohua also sneered. "Lord Sect Leader knows how dissatisfied you are with me, so he followed your tone and sent me down the mountain. You went down the mountain without permission to kill me. Aren't you afraid of being punished by Lord Sect Leader?" "Punished?" Jing Gang laughed. "Let's not talk about the fact that I went down the mountain through a secret passage. Jing Yi only knows that I went into seclusion to cultivate and doesn't know that I went down the mountain. Even if she knew, I would have killed you long ago. What else can she say? It's just a few words of punishment. Do you think I would abandon the decades of relationship between us for a mere disciple?" Zhang Xiaohua held her chin and didn't say anything. Then she heard Jing Gang say, "Actually, I was a bit anxious that day. If you hadn't found Mo Qingshan's relics and I hadn't listened to Mei Suyan's words, I would have lost my mind and only wanted to kill you to avenge Shuqian. I lost Jing Yi's face in Mo Xian's palace. Do you think I wouldn't have killed you on Lingering Fragrance Peak?" "But," Zhang Xiaohua said thoughtfully, "you don't have evidence that I killed Yu Shuqian. How do you know that I killed her?" "Evidence? It's just something from the legends. As long as you have the slightest chance, this old woman will kill you and kill all the people who can kill Zhuo Kun. The real murderer will also be killed by this old woman." Jing Gang said with a sneer. Zhang Xiaohua's eyes narrowed. "I'd rather kill 1,000 by mistake than let one person go. Great Elder, what a good plan. I, Jing Gang, kill people. Do I still need to plan?" Jing Gang said proudly. "That's true." Zhang Xiaohua put down her hand and said, "There's an old proverb that says those who kill will be killed by others. I don't know if Great Elder has heard of it." "Ha ha ha." Jing Gang laughed. "I have heard of it, but I don't understand. Ren Xiaoyao, you've said so much. You can die now." As she spoke, Jing Gang stretched out her hand and a long sword came out of its scabbard. "Wait a moment." Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand. "Doesn't Great Elder want to know whether I killed Yu Zhuqian or not? There's no difference whether you killed her or not. It won't be too late to tell me after you die. Is that so?" Zhang Xiaohua said as he reached out his hand and took out something from his bosom. When she saw the item in Zhang Xiaohua's hand, Jing Gang's eyes widened. She scolded angrily, "Ren Xiaoyao, you brat, you actually got the purple phoenix hairpin. Zhuqian was indeed killed by you. Give me your life." As she spoke, she raised her long sword. It was very similar to Shi Mujuan's sword. She was going to stab Zhang Xiaohua. "That's not all." Zhang Xiaohua sneered and took out another purple phoenix hairpin from his bosom. He held both purple phoenix hairpins in his hands and waved them in the air a few times. He smiled and said, "Your two precious disciples have become ghosts in my hands. I'm afraid you will follow in their footsteps. Yu Zhuqian left early and I'm afraid she couldn't wait for you. Shi Mujuan, on the other hand, is probably still waiting for you. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.